Chapter 3764. When Stag King and the others saw this, their expressions changed slightly. Zhu Mei sneered and said, "Little prince, you've killed these two upstream beasts. Who knows who ordered them to come here? These two things were found by me. I can do whatever I want with them." Ao Qian didn't care about Zhu Mei at all. "Stag King, did these upstream beasts follow you?" Zhu Mei glanced at Ao Qian and turned to ask Stag King. Stag King shook his head and said hesitantly, "I don't think so. I already checked the surroundings when I came. Check again." Ao Zhan flew into the air without saying anything. His body flashed with golden light as he released his Yuan will. "Okay." Ao Shui also agreed. "No matter who they came with, we'll go check it out first." According to Stag King, no one can enter without his inheritance and demon weapon. Let's take advantage of the break and go in. Okay. Zhu Mei also spread her wings and flew around the hills. All the demons went in different directions and checked for more than 1,000 miles. They didn't find anything, so they returned. Stag King didn't dare to delay. He quickly took out a piece of beast skin and handed it to old demon Jifeng. "Immortal friend Jifeng, take a look. This contains some secrets of my stag clan's inheritance. It should be related to entering Cold Spirit Valley." Old demon Jifeng's face flushed red. Although he was extremely arrogant in front of Xiaohua, when facing Ao Shui, he was no longer imposing. Now that he met Ao Qian and Zhu Mei again, he was even more cautious. He really couldn't compare to these heaven's favored ones in any aspect. Now that Stag King took out a piece of beast skin and let him take a look, his vanity swelled. "This?" Old demon Jifeng was slightly reserved and said humbly, "I didn't know immortal friend Zhu and immortal friend Ao were coming, so I tried to be brave. Now that the two of you are here, I don't dare to embarrass myself. Please take a look first." Stag King frowned. Old demon Jifeng was right. After all, Zhu Mei, Ao Qian, and Ao Zhan were the strongest. Some things should be decided by them. But the problem was, to enter the Cold Spirit Valley, one needed the art of wind travel. King Mulu had already discussed this with old demon Jifeng. Now that he proposed to let the two demons have a look, rather than saying that he was being modest, it was better to say that he was showing off. Sure enough, without waiting for the Stag King to speak, Zhu Mei said coldly, "Little mouse, what do you mean? If you don't want to enter, then scram." Ao Qian laughed maniacally at Zhu Mei's words. "Haha, if this king sees it, you'll have to tuck your tail between your legs and follow behind this king." Fortunately, the two demons didn't directly force him to hand over the beast skin. That old demon Jifeng smiled apologetically and said, Yes, I made a mistake. I'll check it now." Looking at old monster Jifeng's rat-like appearance, the Stag King was both angry and amused. He thought to himself, "A rat is a rat. Even if it has cultivated for 10,000 years, it is still a rat." They had never heard of a rat becoming a saint in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. This is not only related to the bloodline but also to the temperament. Although old demon Jifeng looked wretched, his strength was indeed very strong. He only released his primordial thought for a moment, and his small rat-like eyes were filled with doubt. Holding the beast's skin, he asked curiously, "King Mulu, is it that simple? What we discussed before didn't seem to be just that." "Fellow immortal, what you want to do is that simple." The Stag King smiled and said, "When I was discussing with fellow immortal, this king didn't know that there would be other immortal friends coming." Old demon Jifeng looked slightly disappointed and handed the beast's skin to the Stag King. Zhu Mei, young prince, General Ao, Inspector, entering the Cold Spirit Valley requires the help of 4 fellow immortal friends. This is the beast skin that this king has just prepared. With that, the Stag King took out 4 more beast skins and handed them to the 4 demons. After the 4 demons took them, he said, "This king originally thought that it would be difficult for the inspector, old demon Jifeng, and the 3 of us to open the barrier of the Cold Spirit Valley, so I invited Zhu Mei. Since young prince and General Ao are here, this king has full confidence that we can go in." Okay. Ao Shui took the beast skin and looked at Ao Zhan and Ao Qian. He nodded and looked at it. In just a moment, the 4 demons finished looking at it. Zhu Mei said coldly, "This barrier of the cold spirit valley requires our essence blood. I need to think about whether we should go in or not." The Stag King smiled bitterly. He knew very well that humans and demons both needed essence blood to cultivate, but demons were different from humans. In order to break the barrier and refine magic treasures, Taoist cultivators could spit out large amounts of essence blood. The essence blood used for refining could be replenished in a short period of time. However, the Yao clan was different. The inheritance of the Yao clan lay in their bloodline. Not to mention large amounts of blood essence, they did not even dare to waste a single strand of blood essence. This was because even a strand of blood essence would require many years of cultivation to make up for. This was even more so for high-level demons like Zhu Mei. If there weren't enough benefits, Zhu Mei wouldn't waste her essence blood for nothing. "Zhu Mei, I don't know what's inside. It's up to you." The Stag King said calmly, "If you don't go, old demon Zhifeng's essence blood should be useful." "Damn it, isn't it just a drop of essence blood? Can't you just use the blood glory ginseng? Don't tell me your Vermilion Bird clan doesn't have such a treasure." Ao Qian was unhappy and shouted. Zhu Mei's eyes flashed with anger. She glanced at the 3 generals of the Dragon Palace and said, "There are many treasures in the Dragon Palace, but there are also many prodigals. Damn it!" Blue water rushed out from Ao Qian's dragon horn. He was about to get angry. "Young prince, please wait." Ao Zhan quickly stopped him and asked, "Zhu Mei, do you have other ideas?" Zhu Mei didn't neglect Ao Zhan. She nodded and said, "That's right. If I have to waste my essence blood to enter Cold Spirit Valley, I might as well return to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and explore Mount Cast Demon." "Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? You think you can enter Mount Cast Demon?" Ao Qian immediately shouted, "If you want a bargain, why don't you find a good reason?" "Shut up." Ao Qian turned around and said, "If you don't want to go in, I'll accompany you back to the East Sea Dragon Palace." "Don't." Ao Qian hurriedly smiled and said, "I haven't had enough fun yet. Why would I return to the lifeless bottom of the sea?" "Well, since you don't want to go back now, then please listen to my arrangements." Whatever. Ao Qian put away the blue water and took a few steps back. He raised his claws and looked into the distance. Ao Zhan looked at Zhu Mei and said, "Actually, I have the same idea as you. It doesn't matter whether we go in or not." Moreover, this general had no intention of obtaining any benefits from it. "It was only because of the little prince's experience that I followed along. I can't guarantee that I can make up for the essence blood you used. But when I think about how Cold Spirit Valley was where the ancient demons went to experience it, to be honest, I'm also curious. Although my dragon race has left the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, in ancient times my dragon race was also part of the demon race. I'd like to see what kind of opportunities there are." "Focus, concentrate, I understand." Although Ao Zhan didn't say those words, Zhu Mei realized something when she saw Ao Zhan's gaze. She nodded and said, "Maybe I can learn something from the experience?" "I don't know." Ao Zhan shook his head. "How about the Stag King struck while the iron was hot and said with a smile, "Let's not talk about what we get in Cold Spirit Valley based on our own opportunities. I'll give you half of what we get together. How about that?" "If that's the case." Zhu Mei glanced at the 3 demons of the Dragon Palace and finally nodded. "All right." Seeing Zhu Mei agree, the Stag King was overjoyed. However, he still carefully glanced at Ao Zhan and Ao Qian. After all, the 2 demons were not included in the previous discussion. Now that he added more to Zhu Mei, who knew what the 2 demons would think? Fortunately, it seemed that Ao Zhan really brought Ao Qian here for experience and didn't care about what they got together. Thus, Stag King hurriedly said, "If that's the case, let's do it now." "Okay." When the demons heard that, they all put away their beast skins and urged their demon clouds to fly to the 5 hills. When the 5 demons stood still on the 5 hills, old demon Zhifeng urged his wind escape and soared into the sky for more than 10,000 feet. "Let's do it." Seeing that they stood still according to the previous discussion, Stag King carefully checked his memory again. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he spoke. Although Zhu Mei and Ao Qian were arrogant and unruly, they did not dare to be negligent in the face of the ancient barrier. Hearing the Stag King's words, they turned around and faced the 5 faintly discernible beast heads on the hill. Pooh! The 5 demons opened their mouths at the same time and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Wang! Once the essence blood came out, there was no need to use any demon technique. 5 thin rays of starlight and moonlight fell from the sky into the essence blood. The entire essence blood swelled rapidly as if it was boiling. Then, 5 hurricanes rolled up a whirlpool above the essence blood and countless chi of heaven and earth swarmed in. The power of the stars and moonlight couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but the hurricanes could see the difference in the essence blood of the 5 demons. Stag King's essence blood was the color of dead wood. In the thumb-sized drop of blood, a blurry antler could be faintly seen. The hurricane above the drop of blood was the size of a fist. Although Ao Shui, Ao Qian, and Ao Zhan were all dragons, their essence blood was different. Ao Shui's essence blood was earthy yellow and also had a blurry dragon head. The hurricane above it was also the size of a fist. Ao Qian's essence blood was water blue and the dragon head inside was extremely clear. Even the dragon horn could be seen clearly. Of course, the hurricane above it was also close to a foot long. Ao Zhan's essence blood was more strange. It was silver white and not only did it have a dragon head, but it also had a dragon body. However, when Ao Zhan spat out the essence blood, he blocked it with his body. He even slightly raised his hand and shrunk the 3-foot hurricane to half a foot long. Zhu Mei's essence blood was very arrogant. It was actually a ball of scarlet flame. Moreover, this flame was in the shape of a vermilion bird. The hurricane that rushed into the essence blood was also more than 3 feet long. Oh! Zhu Mei didn't care about her own essence blood. She was closest to Ao Zhan and inadvertently glanced at the hurricane that had just shrunk. She was shocked. Why is Ao Zhan's blood so pure? Could it be that he... Chapter 3765. However, seeing that Ao Zhan, Ao Qian, and Ao Shui had their backs facing each other, Zhu Mei immediately retracted her gaze. The secret of the Dragon Palace. Even someone as strong as Zhu Mei didn't want to get involved. Puff, puff, puff. Zhu Mei retracted her gaze and spat out several mouthfuls of demonic energy. Then, she flapped her wings and flames fell into it. The entire essence blood slowly rotated, and the shape of the vermilion bird gradually turned into a strange talisman. It was very similar to the talisman on Xiao Hua's white bones. Since Zhu Mei made her move, the other 4 demons naturally began to move as well. The talismans of the 3 dragons were very similar, but the Stag King's was different. Move! Seeing that the talisman was already clearly visible, the Stag King shouted. Zhu Mei and the others pushed their arms at the same time, and 5 talismans made of essence blood rushed towards the beast heads of the 5 hills. Shwa! The essence blood fell into the stone walls of the hills, but there was no movement. In just a moment, boom! The 5 hills shook at the same time, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The earth was also shaking, and the 5 hills were actually pulled out from the ground. Patches of moss were cut off from the hills, and huge rocks rolled down from the top of the hills. Layers of bloody light spread over the hills, and the originally blurry beast heads on the hills became abnormally clear. Moreover, under the uprooted hills, the bodies of the strange beasts were revealed. Just as the bodies of the 5 strange beasts were revealed, 5 beastly roars resounded from the 5 stone walls that had already formed the mountain peaks. Immediately, the phantoms of the 5 strange beasts came out of the walls, and the red clouds that filled the sky instantly rolled away. 5 pillars of light that were invisible to the naked eye penetrated through the gaps of the 5 clouds, directly covering the phantoms. 5 abnormally fierce and desolate auras rushed out of the phantoms, not only making the 5 demons unstable, but also spreading out in all directions like a tide. Amazing! Zhu Mei's body flashed with flames, and her eyelidless eyes were filled with ecstasy. She stared at the phantoms without blinking. As an expert of the demon clan, it was very easy for her to capture the indescribable aura of an expert from the phantoms. Zhu Mei was like this. And in the sky, old demon Zhifeng's entire body was trembling. This kind of trembling was both afraid and excited. The aura of the phantoms was the power that he had dreamed of for thousands of years. Roar! After a few breaths, the 5 phantoms simultaneously roared towards the sky, and each rushed towards the center. Boom! The 5 phantoms collided together. There was no soaring chi, but tens of thousands of starlight fragments. These fragments were like withered leaves in front of the demons'. Immediately, totems and shadows and totems were produced, flashing and flickering from the fragments. Zhu Mei and the others, the 9 dragons' body were dazzling, the 9 dazzled their eyes. And the 9 dragons, its 9 claws dazzled this. And there was the head. The were the 9 claws of this. And the this to them, it. This is primeval dragon. Ao Qian, Ao Zhan, and Ao Shui were dumbfounded. Primeval dragon, the ancestor of the dragon clan. They didn't know how many legends they had heard about the origin of the dragon clan, but they had never seen the primeval dragon's appearance in the dragon palace. They hadn't even seen the primeval dragon's totem in their memories. What did this mean? No one knew better than them what kind of experience they were about to face. Heavenly phoenix? The primeval dragon's totem flashed and disappeared. Then, a phoenix with a sharp beak, slender eyes, and 7 colored feathers appeared in the totem. This phoenix's eyes were filled with incomparable arrogance. Zhu Mei's body trembled. She was even more surprised than the 3 dragons. Then, the totems of the primeval demon clan's ancestors appeared one after another. Among them, there were some that the demons knew. In the end, each of the totems shocked the demons because these totems were beyond their knowledge. The 6 demons knew in their hearts that these ancient, almighty, and peerless experts might have been annihilated in the torrent of time. Other than the totems left behind from the ancient times, even some legends had disappeared. Dear! Suddenly, a totem similar to the Stag King appeared in the nebula. Zhu Mei couldn't help but cry out, "Stag King, is this?" "Yes, this is the totem in this king's inheritance." The Stag King was shocked and immediately realized. Seeing that the Stag King's totem was about to disappear, the Stag King shouted. He didn't dare to slow down. He waved his hand and took out something that looked like an antler from the heaven and earth bracelet on his arm. He hurriedly threw it, and the antler rushed into the Stag King's horn on the totem. Although the antler didn't completely match the one on the totem, and there was still an inch-long gap on the totem, the entire totem stopped. Then, the totem rapidly transformed into the shape of a huge cauldron and fell towards the river below. Boom! Water light rose from the sky, and the earth shook violently again. Countless rocks were torn apart, and a black hole that was dozens of feet in size appeared in the middle of the water pillar. Woo! A huge stream of air rushed into the sky and blew towards old demon Zhifeng, who was calmly standing thousands of feet in the sky. GG! At this moment, old demon Zhifeng was filled with pride. He opened his mouth and cried out a few times. He turned into a breeze and entered the stream of air, going against the current. "Everyone, please don't rush in." The Stag King saw that old demon Zhifeng had entered the stream of air and was flying towards the black hole. He hurriedly shouted, "This is the enchantment of the Cold Spirit Valley. If you don't have the wind travel technique, you can't enter. Everyone, please don't try." If it was a normal situation, why would Zhu Mei and Ao Qian care? However, after seeing the primordial dragon and heavenly phoenix, no matter how arrogant they didn't dare to touch this restriction that they didn't know how powerful it was. Old demon Zhifeng's progress was very smooth. In a short moment, he had already reached the side of the black hole. As old demon Zhifeng stood in front of the black hole, woo! A whimper was heard. The totem and light disappeared, turning into tens of thousands of stars and falling towards the 5 mountains. At the same time, the 5 mountains slowly fell towards the ground. "Go!" the Stag King shouted. His figure flew out first and fell into the black hole. In fact, there was no need for the Stag King's reminder. The other 4 demons had already retracted their figures and followed the Stag King into the black hole. Boom! When the 6 demons rushed into the black hole fell along with the mountains and slowly closed. The water that rushed into the sky suddenly fell, and the entire river covered the black hole. However, when everything calmed down, a huge whirlpool appeared on the surging river. It didn't disappear for a long time. Strangely, not long after, Ao Shuai's figure actually peeked out of the whirlpool. He looked left and right, then shrank back. When he reappeared, it was Ao Shuai and the Stag King again. Looking at the whirlpool below him, the Stag King smiled bitterly. "Inspector, this entrance isn't completely closed. I'm afraid it's because this king's token is missing. However, the entrance is still gradually shrinking. I think it won't be long before it completely closes." "All right." Ao Shuai's Yuan will swept and nodded. "Since it's a place for us demons to train, others might not know. Let's hurry down." Then the 2 demons disappeared again. Half a day later, the whirlpool shrank by half again. Suddenly, boom! Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan rushed out of the whirlpool. As soon as the 2 demons appeared, they immediately swept out with their Yuan wills. In the time it took to eat a meal, the 2 demons retracted their Yuan wills and looked at each other. Knowing that there were no humans or demons here, they didn't say anything and rushed into the whirlpool and disappeared. Below the whirlpool was the black hole that was still a few feet wide. The 2 demons rushed into the black hole, their bodies slightly distorted and instantly elongated like long branches. This figure swam in a long, colorful passage. When it condensed again, Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan's eyes lit up. The 2 demons rushed out of a fist-sized crack. At this time, the crack was on the ground, and the river water that emitted a strange smell was spurting out from this crack. "How is it? Did the 2 of you find any clues?" the Stag King hurriedly asked when he saw the 2 demons appear. "No." Ao Zhan looked at the huge trees and rocks around him and answered, "It's the same as when we came in. No demons came." "So?" the Stag King nodded. "Only the 2 water beasts followed us, and no other demons?" "Of course." Zhu Mei looked at the floating antlers in the sky and said, "You can take this token. See if you can close the entrance." "Wait a moment." The Stag King was uncertain. "If I take the token, we might be teleported away again. Won't the entrance be open for other demons to enter?" "Enter my ass." Ao Qian was already impatient. Looking at the vast wilderness and the 9 suns and stars in the sky, he shouted, "Hurry up and take the token. I'm still waiting for my training." "Young prince," Ao Zhan reminded him in a low voice. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of thunder could be heard from afar, and it was getting closer and closer. "Thunder Flood Dragon. Damn it, it's a Thunder Flood Dragon." Zhu Mei scanned with her essence will and saw a 200 feet long flood dragon with lightning flashing around its body. It was flying towards them like lightning. She couldn't help but moan, "This Thunder Flood Dragon has the power to swallow the sun. Why isn't there any essence will?" The demons were shocked and released their essence wills. Old demon Zhifeng couldn't help but exclaim, "Hurry up and leave. Our essence wills have already disturbed the Thunder Flood Dragon." Ao Zhan hurriedly shouted, "This Thunder Flood Dragon is an opponent for us to train with. The reason why it doesn't have any essence wills might be because it can't condense essence wills in this barrier. Go! Hurry up and leave." At this point, the Stag King didn't care if other demons entered. He reached out and immediately took the token in his hand. When his hoof-like hand touched the antler token, a cryptic message was transmitted from the antler. "Ah?" The Stag King was immediately stunned. An inconceivable ecstasy appeared on his face. Chapter 3766. What's wrong? Zhu Mei hurriedly asked when she saw that the demons were not teleported away and the Deer King was so ecstatic. The Deer King took a deep breath and shouted, "I'll let you know that this is indeed the Cold Spirit Valley used by the ancient demon clan for training. These demons... No, we can only call them demon beasts. They grew up in the cold spirit valley and don't know how to cultivate. They don't have primordial thoughts. What? No primordial thoughts? The demons were overjoyed, but then old demon Jifeng shouted indignantly, even if they don't have primordial thoughts, they don't have intelligence. No, demon beasts that aren't even in the hair removal realm have the strength of the moon-picking realm? Let's not talk about it. Let's go. Zhu Mei flapped her wings and flew up, shouting, let's escape from the Thunder Flood Dragon first. That guy is already flying over. Let's go. Ao Zhan raised his hand and a golden spear appeared in his hand. He hurriedly said, we'll discuss how to face the enemy as we go. The 6 demons no longer dared to pay attention to the water flow at the entrance and hurriedly flew away on their demon clouds. In just a moment, the Thunder Flood Dragon flashed and fell. The Thunder Flood Dragon did not fall, but its violent aura scattered the water flow. The Thunder Flood Dragon stuck out its snake head and sniffed the water flow. Lightning flowed around its body as if it was about to rush into the entrance. Boom! A burst of star power exploded at the entrance, flipping the 200 feet long Thunder Flood Dragon over. Streaks of blood even appeared on the Thunder Flood Dragon scales. Roar! The Thunder Flood Dragon let out a sorrowful cry and flew in the direction that the Deer King and the others flew in. After half a day, the fist-sized entrance became smaller and smaller. The water flow that rushed out became smaller and smaller. However, it was also much higher. At this moment, a white light flashed in the water. 2 ferocious-looking dragon figures appeared in the water. Swoosh! At this moment, a white light flashed in the water, and 2 more ferocious dragon figures appeared in the water. However, as soon as these 2 dragons appeared, they immediately flew to the sides and did not stop at all. When the 2 dragons landed in the air, they looked at each other and then at the situation around them. They were really confused. One of them said, Jiang Peng, is this the Cold Spirit Valley? I don't know. The dragon named Jiang Peng shook his head slightly. There is no record of the Cold Spirit Valley in our clan. I only learned about it from the messages of the 2 water beasts. However, now is not the time to pursue the matter. Let's avoid it first and familiarize ourselves with it before acting according to the plan. It seems that what we discussed earlier was not like this. The dragon shook his head slightly. We didn't have to come in. Zhang Che, when we came out, the elder had already said that you must listen to me. We must act according to the situation. Previously, the dragon bones didn't even stir up trouble between the Dragon Palace and Zhai Xinglu. Now we have to make up for our mistakes. Jiang Peng waved his claws. His body was almost crawling on the ground as he swam far away. The dragon named Zhang Che felt very helpless. He could only lie down and swim along. Although the 2 dragons were supported by floating clouds, Zhang Che still glared fiercely at the gradually falling water and the gradually shrinking entrance. The entrance to the Cold Spirit Valley had already been sealed. No human or demon would be able to enter anymore. Moreover, as the 2 dragons swam, a strange color emerged from their scales. This color gradually diffused around the 2 dragons. The 2 dragons had already fused with their surroundings. It was hard to see any dragon shape. It was as if the 2 dragons had mysteriously disappeared. Putting aside the fact that the demons had flown into the Cold Spirit Valley to train, just as Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen were about to move, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat again. He whispered, "Don't rush." Ah! Fu Jiwen was stunned. He clearly remembered that 3 years ago, when Xiao Hua had just agreed under his urging, Xiao Hua mysteriously went into seclusion. Fu Jiwen also mysteriously practiced. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. And now it was the same again. Fu Jiwen looked at Xiao Hua strangely. He did not know why. "Come here quickly." Xiao Hua hurried to the cloud bed. As he walked, he said, "Disciple, think carefully. Before we entered the Misty Mountain maze, did you think that the 4 layers of formations were already very powerful? Did you not think that there were 2 layers of maze in this formation?" "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen nodded blankly. "Did you think that after the first layer of maze, the outer mansion would be Senior Tsang Lang Zi's cave residence? Did you not think that there would be a second layer of maze? Yes, master. Then when you entered the outer mansion for the second time, did you think that you had gone the wrong way and would not step into the same cave entrance? Yes, master. Then when you entered the inner mansion, did you think that there was nothing in the cave residence? Were you very disappointed? Yes, master. When you got the ink cloud pupil and the elixir from the two caves, did you want to leave? Did you not think that there was a jade ruby on the cloud bed? Yes, master. And now, did you have some enlightenment and feel that there was nothing in the cave residence and want to leave? Yes, master. That's right. So, the biggest secret hidden in Senior Tsong Zi's cave residence was not what I got before. The biggest secret is on the cloud bed. Ah, master, why? I don't understand. Xiao Hua smiled strangely and pointed to the cloud bed, saying, It's very simple. Because I can't take the cloud bed away. No way. What kind of reason is this? Fu Jiwen cried, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Of course, this is the reason. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with excitement. He pointed to the empty cave residence and said, The jade shelves, jade tables, jade chairs, and so on in the cave residence can be moved. Why can't the cloud bed be moved? Moreover, according to what I just said, every time Senior Tsong tried to hide something, it would only make it more conspicuous. Every discovery would be a pleasant surprise. This surprise was unexpected and joyful, which was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. When ordinary people came to Senior Tsong Zi's cave residence, their ultimate goal was to get Senior Tsong Zi's orthodoxy and the way of formation. But now, I boldly speculate that the most precious thing in this cave residence is definitely not Senior Tsong Zi's enlightenment of Taoism, but something else. Master! Fu Jiwen felt wronged and said, Haven't I found Senior Tsong Zi's orthodoxy? Didn't you gain some other enlightenment on the cloud bed? Isn't that the most precious thing? What's more precious? He, my disciple, to tell you the truth, the orthodoxy you got was left by Tsong Zi in ink cloud pupil. What I got is his real enlightenment, the crystallization of Taoism. But don't worry, when your cultivation is high enough, I will teach you. Xiao Hua walked to the cloud bed with a smile. He looked at the huge cloud bed and said, I'm really looking forward to it. You and I have gained a lot from the trip to Misty Mountain, but we still haven't found the most precious thing in the cave residence. What is the most precious thing? It's something that Senior Tsong Zi couldn't take away. Master, you're so careful. Fu Jiwen was completely defeated by the money grubber Xiao Hua. He followed behind Xiao Hua and walked to the front of the cloud bed. He looked up and down, looked left and right, and even walked to the inside of the cloud bed to take a look. He was still confused. It was just a cloud bed. Who would think that there was some mystery inside? Xiao Hua laughed and said, Senior Tsong Zi blocked his divine thought and Buddhist awareness in this cave residence because he didn't want others to find the secret of the cloud bed. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. He didn't expect that I would come here thousands of years later. Yes, master. You cleaned Senior Tsong Zi's cave residence so well. This is Senior Tsong Zi's way of thanking you. Fu Jiwen replied with a bitter smile. But he was really impressed by Xiao Hua's ability. Humph! Xiao Hua released his soul awareness and carefully examined it. He snorted and said, If you want Bai-an to stay in the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal, then don't talk nonsense. He, disciple was wrong. Fu Jiwen laughed, but his heart was moved. He hurriedly took off the wooden box from his neck and handed it to Xiao Hua. Master, since this is the most precious treasure in Tsong Zi's cave residence, the restrictions inside must be the most powerful. Master should take this Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal. It might be useful. And that's a filial disciple. Xiao Hua smiled and put it in his sleeve. Don't worry. If there is an opportunity, Master will help you rescue Bai-an. Thank you for everything, Master. Fu Jiwen jumped down from the cloud bed and said, If there are any difficult restrictions, disciple won't go in. Disciple's magic power is weak. If I go, I'll be a burden to Master. Oh, you're not too greedy. You know when to advance and when to retreat. You're much better than Master. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. If it was him, he would risk his life to charge in. But then Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked at Fu Jiwen with a smile and said, "Disciple, are you trying to persuade Master?" "A little." Fu Jiwen's smile disappeared and he respectfully said, "Master, Disciple has followed Master into Songlang Zi's cave residence. Along the way, Disciple has gained a lot, far more than Disciple expected. This is something that Disciple didn't dare to imagine. If Disciple has gained so much, then Master's gains must be far greater than Disciple's. Disciple has been under Master's protection for a lot of time. I didn't see Master in any danger, but Disciple can imagine Master's narrow escape. Master, the so-called luck will come to an end one day. Master has already obtained Songlang Zi's orthodoxy. Why don't you quit while you're ahead?" Hee. Xiao Hua looked at Fu Jiwen, who was worried about him, and his heart felt warm. He smiled and said, "Master's luck is far from what you know. Master's luck is comparable to the luck of a country, comparable to the luck of a province. Although the maze designed by Songlang Zi is powerful, it is still nothing in Master's eyes." Chapter 3767. "But, Master..." Fu Jiwen still wanted to say more, but Xiao Hua continued, "Master's knowledge is very complex, and you can't imagine it. Senior Songlongzi seems to be similar to Master, and Senior Songlongzi's cave is the biggest opportunity Master has encountered so far. In other words, after getting out of this misty mountain maze, Master doesn't need to look for other ancient ruins, as they are meaningless to Master. What's more, Master doesn't feel any sense of crisis, which means that the biggest secret hidden in this cave won't pose a threat to Master's life." "Okay." Fu Jiwen knew that he couldn't persuade Xiao Hua, so he nodded and said, "Disciple can only say this. If Master insists on exploring, Disciple can only wish Master a fruitful return. You don't have to wait here, you also have to follow Master." Xiao Hua's words surprised Fu Jiwen. "Ah!" Fu Jiwen was surprised. "This is Songlongzi's cave. Since Huangshou and others can come in, others can also come in. Especially since Master obtained Senior Songlongzi's orthodoxy, you and I have been in this cave for 3 whole years." Xiao Hua said with a smile. Zhai Xingzi, Sun Kong, and Zhang Daoran were also trapped in the maze for 3 years. When Master came down from the cloud bed, there seemed to be some changes in this cave, and the maze might have disappeared, and these people could come in immediately. If they come in, Master won't be here, and only you are here. How will you answer other people's questions?" And Fu Jiwen nodded. "Moreover, Master calculated that you would be more scared than in danger. Previously, with Fairy Su Ming's self-detonation, you were indeed in danger, but that little bit of danger couldn't be seen in Master's eyes. Master feels that you should still follow Master to broaden your horizons. After all, this kind of opportunity is not available to everyone." Xiao Hua explained. Fu Jiwen knew that Xiao Hua was protecting him, so how could he not know what was good for him? He hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple thanks Master. You can stand on the side. First, let Master see what this restriction is." Xiao Hua had already used his soul sense to clearly see that this cloud bed was not one with the stone wall. It was just that the cloud bed was extremely close to the stone wall. Relying solely on the naked eye, even a cultivator's naked eye would not be able to distinguish the two. What puzzled Xiao Hua the most was that there was no magic power fluctuation coming from where the cloud bed came into contact with the stone wall. He also didn't find anything out of place with his soul sense. After Fu Jiwen moved aside, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead. The illusion breaker eyes flashed with a dark green brilliance and opened. "Sii." When he saw that the stone wall before him was the same as before, Xiao Hua was completely disappointed. He sucked in a breath of air and closed his eyes with his brows tightly furrowed. "That's impossible," Xiao Hua thought to himself. How could there be nothing wrong with this cloud bed? Could it be that Senior Songlongzi had set up an empty fort strategy here? But even if it's an empty fort strategy, what is he trying to hide? After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua's illusion breaker eyes slightly blinked. A silver-white ring of light rippled from his eyes. Xiao Hua pushed his illusion breaker eyes to the limit. Haha, here. Xiao Hua looked for a moment, then finally laughed loudly. So it was hidden so subtly. If it weren't for this Zhao's illusion breaker eyes and the Buddhist sect's heavenly eye, I'm afraid it really would be difficult to see this point of light that's even fainter than a needle's eye. Seeing Xiao Hua laugh, Fu Jiwen was also stunned. With a tone of disbelief, he said, Master, you really found something? Of course. Xiao Hua withdrew his heavenly eye. With a flick of his Taoist robe, he used universe-concealing sleeves and laughed. Take a look at Master's power. Rise. This time was different from the previous probing. Xiao Hua used 70% of his magic power. Unfortunately, the cloud bed didn't move under his big hand. It didn't even sway. This really made Xiao Hua stunned. That's impossible. Xiao Hua knew the power of his universe-concealing sleeves. With his current strength, not to mention a cloud bed that was several zhang in size, even a small mountain would collapse. This old man understands now. Suddenly, Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly withdrew his magic power and urged the heavenly law's embodiment technique. A huge golden body flashed with a dark golden brilliance. At this time, Xiao Hua grabbed the two sides of the cloud bed. Relying only on the strength of his body, he shouted, Rise! Boom! The cloud bed was like a 10,000 gene mountain that was slowly lifted by Xiao Hua. As the cloud bed was lifted, the entire immortal cave trembled. It was as if Xiao Hua was lifting the entire cloud mountain. As it trembled, that cloud bed had only moved to a height of a few feet. Woo! A fishy wind blew out from under the cloud bed, enveloping Xiao Hua's golden body and the wide-eyed Fu Jiwen at the side. A force so strong that even Xiao Hua was unable to resist was generated. Without the slightest fluctuation of magic power, without the slightest splendor, the two people strangely disappeared just like that. Boom! The cloud bed fell. The entire cloud mountain shook. Every cultivator that stepped into the immortal cave also slightly swayed. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen's feet landed on the ground. The scene in front of them changed greatly. Xiao Hua didn't have time to withdraw his golden body. He immediately released his soul sense to explore. It was a space that was hundreds of feet wide. The walls of the space were covered with thick murals. On the murals, there were mountains and rivers, strange beasts and giants, vast forests, and vast yellow sands. However, there were no ordinary people in the murals. There were also no towns or villages. Xiao Hua's soul sense only roughly looked at these murals that were filled with a primitive aura. He left his soul sense at the end of this space. That place was 100 zhang in size altar. The altar was in the shape of a hill. Rugged bones were placed on top of it. Bloody and abnormal totems were smeared on the altar. These totems were very strange. Some were in the shape of flames, some were in the shape of glaciers, and some were in the shape of strange beasts. Even when they reached the top of the altar, there were skeletons, leg bones, ghosts, and other unimaginable shapes. Ouch! Just as Xiao Hua was looking at the altar again, Fu Jiwen suddenly screamed from the side. What's wrong? Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand, and a seal was placed around Fu Jiwen. Fu Jiwen curled up on the ground in pain. He lowered his voice and groaned, Master, disciple, used my soul sense to explore these murals. Countless images rushed into disciple's mind. Disciple can't bear it, and now I have a splitting headache. All right, you should take a rest. Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror and put Fu Jiwen into it. He looked at the murals around him. He didn't release his soul sense, but still used his soul sense to check the altar. After Xiao Hua finished looking at the last few strange totems, his soul sense fell on the top of the altar. It was an oval platform about a foot in size. There was a groove on it, and in the groove there was a shabby oil lamp. Isn't this the shabby oil lamp that I obtained in Sky Patrol City? Isn't this the soul tool from Million Meng Mountains? How did it appear here? Xiao Hua was stunned when he saw the oil lamp. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out the oil lamp that he had forgotten in the corner of the space. Sure enough, although there were some slight differences in the style of the two oil lamps, they were the same in terms of texture and general style. No, this isn't a soul tool. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. At that time, the cultivator said that this was an item from the 10,000 demon realm. He took it from a soul cultivator. Could this altar be related to the 10,000 demon realm? But even if it is related to the 10,000 demon realm, what's the use of this altar? Xiao Hua was completely confused. Song Longzi is our Dao Sex Tribulation Stage Senior. What does he mean by hiding such an altar in his cave residence? Could it be that Senior Song Longzi is related to the 10,000 demon realm? Then Xiao Hua recalled again. It seemed that Song Longzi didn't have any records about this altar. Maybe it's recorded in the ink cloud pupil? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and took out the ink cloud pupil that Fu Jiwen took. After a little hesitation, he looked at it again. However, Xiao Hua didn't expect that the ink cloud pupil didn't have any records at all. This is one of Song Longzi's biggest secrets. Xiao Hua put away the ink cloud pupil and narrowed his eyes. He looked at the strange altar thoughtfully. After a few minutes, Xiao Hua temporarily moved his soul consciousness and eyes away from the altar and released his divine sense to explore the murals around him. Boom, boom, boom. Sure enough, as Fu Jiwen said, when Xiao Hua's divine sense came into contact with the murals, vivid images fell into Xiao Hua's mind like giant meteors. The impact made Xiao Hua's blood vessels expand. Huh? This is also a kind of test? After Xiao Hua finished looking at some of the murals gave off a strange light. Correspondingly, a totem on the altar flashed and had a faint color. Bloodline power? Looking at the murals one by one, Xiao Hua discovered that they were all pictures of ancient times. Furthermore, every time an ancient picture entered his mind, Xiao Hua's bloodline would be stimulated, and an indescribable power would gradually be born around Xiao Hua's body. When Xiao Hua finished looking at all of the murals, a desolate, boundless, and even bloody aura rushed out from the altar and filled the entire space. Could this altar be the remains of a soul cultivator? Xiao Hua looked at the altar that seemed to have come to life, his eyes narrowing and narrowing. Although his soul cultivation was not shallow, he was still a little nervous when faced with the mysterious remains of a soul cultivator. But if I want to know if the Dawn Rain continent and the other 3 continents are in the same realm, I might have to take a trip to the remains of a soul cultivator. Maybe I can even find the passage to the Million Meng Mountains. With that thought in mind, Xiao Hua looked at the oil lamp in his hand and waved it toward the altar. Unfortunately, when the oil lamp fell, the altar didn't move. Chapter 3768. Lamp Oil. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and hurriedly took down the oil lamp and put a drop of lamp oil into it. After seeing that there was still no reaction from the lamp oil, he waved his hand and a strand of spirit fire flew up to the altar and landed on the oil lamp. Swoosh! The spirit fire lit up the quaint oil lamp. Ayo! Under the light of the fire, the oil lamp trembled slightly as if it was alive. Strange runes bloomed from the outer layer of the oil lamp, and then a strange beast with 7 colors appeared from the oil lamp. Seven light beast? Xiao Hua looked at the familiar runes and then looked at the strange beast. He was almost dumbfounded. He didn't know about the 7 light beast before, but there were some marks in Little White's memory. It was a rare soul beast in the 10,000 demon realm. It was said that each of the lights of the 7 light beast could cause different damage to the soul of a demon or a human. He didn't expect that the oil lamp was actually a 7 light beast. The 7 light beast let out a desolate groan, and the 7-colored brilliance fell from the altar like a whirlpool. Every time it passed by a totem, the totem would turn into a strange beast. Even the totem that was difficult to understand turned into a strange beast that Little White had never seen before. When all the totems were lit up, all the strange beasts flew out of their totems and circled around the altar. Then, a loud sound of a bugle horn came from the altar. Following the sound of the bugle horn, the strange beasts transformed into all kinds of strange shapes and swam in the air. These shapes were somewhat ordinary, such as triangular, square, and some were more strange, like swimming fish and hedgehogs. Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. However, when a strange beast's mouth appeared in the air, and then a shape that looked like a square but wasn't a square, and under the square shape there were 4 legs. Xiao Hua was very lucky, and a flash of light appeared in his mind. See Ding? This is the entrance to the legacy world. Xiao Hua almost screamed out. Wasn't that strange beast's mouth the same as the one that appeared when he sacrificially refined the Ding in the sword tomb? Wasn't that the shape of a cauldron? Wasn't this 7-colored brilliance Ding's 7 colors? Xiao Hua was ecstatic. He never thought that he would encounter the entrance to the legacy world here. At this time, there was only one question in his mind. Song Lang, who is he? However, there was no time for him to think about it. Ding was immediately taken out from the space, and he didn't have any extra movements. The beast's mouth in the light made a strange sound, and the 7-colored brilliance turned into a strange beast. It rushed out of the altar, and the beast was Ding was in Xiao Hua. Its aggressive aura made Xiao Hua couldn't help but take 3 steps back. Roar! Ding fell into the beast's mouth, and the 7-colored brilliance of the strange beast disappeared in a flash. When the strange beast returned, Ding was exactly where it was before. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Ding fell, and the whole cauldron trembled violently. Waves of obscure fluctuations rushed towards the altar. Wherever the fluctuations passed, all the images and totems turned into fragments and crashed into the altar along with the fluctuations. Swoosh! The altar collapsed with a loud rumble, and the 7-colored brilliance also shattered. An aura that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth gushed out from these fragments. All of the fragments transformed into a powerful current that rushed towards Xiao Hua. Metal escape technique. Xiao Hua remembered clearly that the metal escape technique was the method to enter the legacy world. He immediately urged the metal escape technique to rush head-on into the torrent. Boom! Like a swimming fish, Xiao Hua only felt countless grotesque illusions appear in front of his eyes. His entire body once again moved against the flow of these illusions. When he reached the altar, a vague barrier blocked in front of Xiao Hua. As Xiao Hua exerted all his strength to activate his magic power, Xiao Hua's body passed through the barrier with some difficulty. Immediately, a powerful pressure fell from all directions, and a familiar feeling appeared in Xiao Hua's heart. Shortly after, the silver-white brilliance turned into a revolving passage, and Xiao Hua's body rapidly passed through this passage. The passage was extremely long and also seemed to be extremely short. In a moment, Xiao Hua's eyes were dazzled by a glaring light. He couldn't help but slightly close his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, his body stopped. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes, a familiar feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. Regardless of whether it was the scene before his eyes or the aura that filled the space. Raising his head, Xiao Hua saw clearly that the entire sky was illuminated by 9 suns. It was extremely similar to the sky in his space, but the difference was that on the other side of the 9 suns, there were unexpectedly 10 moons. Moreover, the moons were several times larger than the suns. What was special was that the sky was densely packed with many stars. From the sun star, the moon star, and countless other stars, huge pillars of stars fell down. These huge pillars of stars covered the entire space, and the aura of desolation and the feeling of desolation were all emitted from these pillars of stars. The power of the stars and the moon. In an instant, Xiao Hua cried out in surprise. I understand now. This is the power of the stars and the moon. In addition to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth used by the cultivators of my Taoism, and the awe-inspiring energy used by the scholars of Confucianism, the demon race of this world actually uses the power of the stars and the moon. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the 2 bones with mysterious talismans from the space. Sure enough, the talismans glowed under the power of the stars and the moon, and two powerful auras emerged from the talismans. Putting away the bones, Xiao Hua released his divine sense. Wherever his divine sense passed, the scene within 1,000 miles fell into Xiao Hua's mind bit by bit. It was a huge tree, a huge rock, a mountain peak, and a wilderness. It was exactly the same as the murals on the walls of the space where the altar was previously. Boom! Just as Xiao Hua was exploring, a powerful vibration came from the top of his head. Xiao Hua's figure flashed, and just as he dodged, a huge sea cauldron fell from the sky, landing right under Xiao Hua's body. At this time, the sea cauldron was probably 100 feet tall, and in front of it, Xiao Hua looked just like an ant. Roar! Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked at the strange runes on the sea cauldron. With a loud roar, he used the heavenly law embodiment technique and the immortal body bestowment technique. The pillar of light from the stars and the moon turned into crystal threads visible to the naked eye and fell into Xiao Hua's body. Along with the pillar of light, Xiao Hua's transcendence golden body was born with a loud bang. It grew bigger by a zhong, and in just a moment it was actually 200 feet tall. The immortal body bestowment technique is indeed the immortal body bestowment technique. Xiao Hua felt that the power of the stars and the moon was even smoother than the energy of heaven and earth as it tempered his body. He couldn't help but sigh. This is a divine ability used by the immortal body bestowment technique. What it tempered was not the energy of heaven and earth, but the power of the stars and the moon. It's just that the immortal body bestowment technique is no longer the immortal body bestowment technique, and the power of the stars and the moon is no longer the power of the stars and the moon. It can only be barely replaced by the energy of heaven and earth. The current Xiao Hua naturally didn't know how to use the power of the stars and the moon. He could only wave his hand, and the sea cauldron fell into his hand again. When the sea cauldron fell into his hand, some information from the sea cauldron entered his mind. What? Holy bloodline? What does this mean? The moment the information appeared, Xiao Hua couldn't help but reveal an expression of shock. When he finished reading it, an inconceivable feeling arose in his heart. Damn it, this Xiao understands now. This so-called legacy world wasn't just a barrier jointly set up by the ancient demonic beasts for their descendants. In this barrier, the purest bloodline of the ancient demonic beasts was preserved, allowing their descendants who had lost their bloodline to come here to find their bloodline and pass on the glory of the demonic beast race. Furthermore, in this barrier, they used the bloodline of the 10,000 races to carry out a plan that spanned hundreds of millions of years. They wanted to give birth to the holy bloodline that the demonic beast race had never had before, a bloodline that could surpass the 10,000 races and 10,000 saints of the demonic beast race. This is too crazy, too inconceivable. Thinking up to here, Xiao Hua looked towards another direction with a strange expression, and shock appeared in his eyes. How is this possible? How do I know the location of the holy bloodline? I found out from the sea cauldron that the location of the bloodline of the Yu family in Fallen Gold Mountain is normal. The sea cauldron didn't have any information about the location of the holy bloodline. How do I know? Moreover, I just entered this legacy realm. Although I have seen all the scenery on the murals outside, it's normal for me to feel a sense of familiarity. But this kind of desolate aura, how can I be familiar with it? Could it be that I've been to the legacy realm before? Or perhaps this memory came from Little White? A series of questions naturally arose from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart, leaving him at a loss. What should I do now? Xiao Hua put away the sea cauldron and looked at the two directions with some hesitation. He didn't know where he should go. Roar! Before Xiao Hua could make a decision, an ear-piercing cry sounded. A bird that was several hundred feet in size flapped its wings and descended from the sky. Its sharp beak, which was several hundred feet in size, pierced towards Xiao Hua's chest. In midair, wherever the beak passed, cracks appeared in the void, and a ferocious killing intent that seemed to have materialized penetrated Xiao Hua's golden body. Damn it! Seeing that the thin, fleshy wings of the bird were covered with talismans and countless beams of starlight and moonlight rushed into these talismans, How could Xiao Hua not know the power of this bird's attack? He roared and took out the wishful staff. Grow, 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 grow. At the same time, Xiao Hua released the godly power centipede. In an instant, the wishful staff turned into 100 feet in size. Xiao Hua's body surged with lightning, and his figure rushed into the air like lightning. The wishful staff was raised to meet the falling bird. The godly power centipede also borrowed the power of Xiao Hua, and wisps of demon clouds surged around its body. Under these demon clouds, the godly power centipede's body suddenly expanded, growing to several hundred feet in size. It rushed aggressively towards the bird. Chapter 3769. Boom! A loud sound came from the sky. The ferocious bird was hit back and forth in the air. Xiao Hua's golden body was hit by the ferocious bird and fell to the ground. Hundreds of giant trees were broken. A towering mountain was also hit by Xiao Hua's golden body and half of it collapsed. On the land that no one had set foot on for many years, a deep pit of hundreds of feet in length and dozens of feet in size was impressively visible. Although the movement of the fight was great, it was somewhat insignificant in the space of the untainted land. As for the divine power centipede, although its size had become bigger, it was still less than 100 feet away from the abdomen of the ferocious bird like lightning. It was about to wave its claws and cut into the wings of the ferocious bird, but the powerful air wave and the ferocious bird's breath suddenly knocked the divine power centipede upside down. As the saying goes, hooligans are not scary, but hooligans with culture are scary. If it was the divine power centipede, it would be, monsters are not scary, but monsters with spiritual wisdom are scary. However, when the dangerous breath arrived, the divine power centipede's body immediately shrank and curled up extremely. Not to mention that the ferocious bird's wings did not hit the divine power centipede. Even if it hit, the divine power centipede would not be hurt. Damn it! Seeing this, Xiao Hua angrily cursed. He climbed up from the ground and stamped his feet. The whole earth trembled. His figure rushed into the sky again. When he took back the divine power centipede, he waved his hand again, and the seal of the sea flew out of the space and was about to hit the ferocious bird in the distance. However, when the seal of ocean overturning seal landed in midair, it didn't have the surging of 10,000 jade talismans that Xiao Hua had imagined. Even the copper-colored light seemed weak. Not good. Not only can my monster not be compared to this ferocious bird, but I can't use my magic weapon. Xiao Hua took out his magic weapon, and the ferocious bird also felt the danger. It spread its wings and prepared to attack again. Under the stimulation of Xiao Hua's spiritual power, he immediately found that the chi of heaven and earth in this space was extremely weak. I neglected it. This is the world of the legacy created by the Monster Clan. Although it is similar to the Untainted Land, it is not the Untainted Land. There is only the power of the stars and the moon in this world, and there is no chi of heaven and earth. Even the chi of righteousness does not exist. This Xiao Hua's Taoist and Confucian magic cannot be used. But, so what? Xiao Hua raised his head and looked over. The entire legacy realm was vast and boundless, and everything was incomparably huge. Even his small and cautious heart was now fermenting like a lofty ambition that soared to the clouds. A surge of arrogance that soared to the heavens was born from Xiao Hua's heart. With this Zhao's cultivation, would I still be afraid of these flat birds? Ah! Xiao Hua raised his head and yelled. The muscles on his golden body rapidly overflowed. At the same time, his entire figure once again pounced forward, and at the same time, his spiritual hammer was activated. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky where the ferocious bird was flying, the invisible giant hammer let out a whimper of the wind, completely enveloping the several acres of space to the left of the ferocious bird. This hammer of divine will was extremely mysterious. That ferocious bird immediately felt a dangerous aura. Both of its wings rapidly flapped, and a powerful whirlwind rushed out from both of its wings. At the same time, the ferocious bird let out a long cry. It raised its head, and a talisman that was several zhang in size rushed into the air and quickly met the hammer of divine will. Boom! A fireball that was several times stronger than Xiao Hua's talisman exploded under the hammer of divine will. Woo! It was at this time that Xiao Hua's wishful staff came over and hit the neck of the ferocious bird. Ayo! The ferocious bird's figure was once again hit and flipped in the air. The sharp claws that were exposed in front of Xiao Hua's eyes also had traces of strange talismans. Xiao Hua did not dare to neglect. When he was about to rush over again, he saw the ferocious bird suddenly let out a sad cry. It spread its wings and flew in another direction. The speed was extremely fast. Xiao Hua had just noticed that the ferocious bird had already flown 1,000 feet away. If the world's essence was abundant, Xiao Hua's thunder escape technique might be able to catch up. But at this time, Xiao Hua could only look at it from afar and frown. Ancient ferocious beasts are all so powerful? Xiao Hua not only could not catch up, but he also did not dare to. Looking at the hot aura in the air that had not yet dissipated, he thought, let's not talk about other things. Let's talk about this ferocious bird. This attack is not systematic. It only relies on instinct. It only uses its beak and has not used its claws or wings. Even when this ferocious bird saw Xiao Hua's spiritual hammer and was hit by the wishful staff, it immediately retreated. This is obviously the meaning of cowardice. In other words, this ferocious bird is not a ferocious bird at all. It is just the most ordinary bird in this relic world. However, this lowest level bird was born with such magical powers. The talisman in its mouth is more powerful than Xiao Hua's fire talisman. Fire talisman, that is a jade talisman that has been lost in the Dawn Rain continent. Unexpectedly, it was actually defeated by a bird here. I really don't know how powerful ancient demonic beasts can be. Si Ding also did not record that there are demonic beasts in the relic world. These demonic beasts should not be originally in the relic world. Perhaps they were brought in by the descendants of the demonic beasts, or perhaps they grew in the relic world. In short, these demonic beasts should have nothing to do with the inheritance of the bloodline. They also have nothing to do with the bloodline of the Supreme Saint. Xiao Hua pondered again. It's just that with these demonic beasts, it will be somewhat troublesome for Xiao Hua to go to those two places. There will be a lot of demonic beasts along the way. In the end, where should I go? Or both places? If I think about it simply, Xiao Hua has nothing to do with the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Even if Xiao Hua obtains their bloodline, it may not be useful. Xiao Hua should go directly to find the Supreme Saint's bloodline. But the problem is that it is the Supreme Saint's bloodline. Even the real ancient demonic beasts do not dare to say that they can accept the Supreme Saint's inheritance. How can Xiao Hua, a human, dare to say that he can accept it? If Xiao Hua only wants to find the inheritance of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain, then what about the memories in Xiao Hua's mind? Who knows? Maybe Xiao Hua will be able to find his own origin in the location of the Supreme Saint's bloodline. Of course, if I can get the bloodline of the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain, even if I can play with it for myself, wouldn't it be better than leaving it to their descendants? Xiao Hua thought and thought, then began to think dirty again. It's a pity that Xiao Hua only has Si Ding as a keepsake. If I have other keepsakes, maybe I can help Fairy Hongxia and Huang Mengxiang find their ancient bloodline. Forget it. I'll look for the Supreme Saint's bloodline first. Things that harm others without benefiting myself should be left for last. After thinking, Xiao Hua withdrew his golden avatar and very carefully released his soul sense. He even used a soul cultivator's flying technique to fly at a low altitude. Although Xiao Hua had already deliberately lowered his altitude to fly, he had only just flown 1,000 feet when a killing intent several times stronger than the previous flying bird quickly rushed over from a direction. Xiao Hua hurriedly swept his soul sense in that direction, only to see a several hundred feet large dauntless bird, with its wings spread open, practically covering the sky as it flew towards him. Granny, I'm afraid it's at the 6th or 7th level of elemental energy. Xiao Hua immediately understood that the vicious bird just now wasn't afraid of him, but was scared away by the dauntless bird. Moreover, seeing that the dauntless bird's body was much stronger than the previous vicious bird, and its pair of fleshy wings were even more robust, How could Xiao Hua not know that this dauntless bird was even more powerful? Xiao Hua cursed in his heart, and hurriedly used his wind escape technique to fly in the direction of the vicious bird from before. Who didn't know how to use the tiger's might to intimidate others? Who knows, he might even be able to pull off a disaster. Xiao Hua's wind escape technique had actually been cultivated to an extremely high level within the rockfall matrix. When he flew, it was like a cool breeze passing through a mountain, without a trace or trace, extremely miraculous. However, this wind escape technique was somewhat lacking when compared to the dauntless bird's wings. But seeing the dauntless bird spread its wings, it instantly traveled several tens of li, its enormous body not the slightest bit clumsy. Seeing this, how could Xiao Hua still dare to have any other misgivings? What magic power consumption, what insufficient elemental energy of heaven and earth, what too big of a movement, he didn't even bother to think about it. Lightning surged around his body, and the leaping thunder realm technique was used, and like a whirlwind, he flew into the distance. The sound of thunder resounded, and that dauntless bird was clearly frightened, somewhat afraid of the lightning around Xiao Hua's body. But in the dauntless bird's moment of hesitation, Xiao Hua's figure had already disappeared. Caw! The dauntless bird let out a long cry, spreading its wings and flying away, seemingly no longer paying attention to Xiao Hua. And when Xiao Hua's released soul sense saw the dauntless bird fly away, his heart was greatly relieved. Just as he was about to take a breather, roar! Ayo! Dozens of cries came from within 100 li. Xiao Hua's soul sense swept out, and his complexion instantly became deathly pale. He saw from behind giant rocks, giant peaks, and giant trees, monstrous beasts several hundred zhang in size emerged. Each and every one of these monstrous beasts had a robust physique, and their appearances were all different. Some were rapidly crawling on the ground, some were riding on monstrous clouds and rushing into the air, some were spreading their wings and flying out. Their eyes, which were larger than ordinary people's, were filled with greed and savagery, and their target was precisely the dazed Xiao Hua who was standing in midair. At this moment, Xiao Hua was like a little wife who had been bullied, his face full of grievances. That's right, didn't I just use the lightning escape technique? Did it have to be like this? Dozens of savage auras rushed over from all directions, sweeping back and forth within 100 zhang of Xiao Hua's body. Although they weren't elemental thoughts, they were more sensitive than elemental thoughts. Xiao Hua didn't dare to stay any longer, and he used the wind escape technique to descend to the ground. After all, he could use the earth escape technique in the mountain rocks, and he could use the wood escape technique in the giant trees, which was much stronger than the lightning escape technique. Ayo ayo! Xiao Hua had just landed, when bursts of roars came from the sky. Xiao Hua only had time to turn his head to take a look, but he saw that most of the dozens of giant beasts were already tearing at each other, and only a small portion of the strange beasts were chasing after him. Immediately, Xiao Hua used the wood escape technique and disappeared into the giant trees. Hiss hiss. The giant beasts descended, and a few of them sniffed at the side for a moment before swaggering away. There were also two that chased after Xiao Hua's escape route. Boom boom boom. One by one, the giant trees were knocked flying by these giant beasts. Wood shavings splashed everywhere, and gravel danced in the air. The strange beasts that were hiding in the giant trees were also blasted out. Chapter 3770. Damn it! After running blindly for an unknown amount of time, Xiao Hua finally breathed a sigh of relief. He hid behind a boulder and rested for a while. He pondered in his heart. This legacy realm is really not a place for people to stay. Why are the demon beasts here so strong? Each of them has rough skin and thick flesh. Even their souls are very solid. This old man's Taoist divine ability and Confucian divine ability are all useless. My only soul technique is also not enough. When the wishful staff hit them, it was simply like scratching an itch. No matter what, this old man is still a great grandmaster with 5th level essence energy. Why am I like a grandson here? No. After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua made a decision. I must get the holy bloodline. Damn it. Only with the holy bloodline can I leave safely. Who is it? Just when Xiao Hua had just calmed down, he was suddenly shocked again. He saw that on the ground less than 1,000 feet away from him, there was a winding flood dragon that was slowly floating and attacking him. Damn it! Seeing this snake-like demon beast, Xiao Hua unconsciously burned with anger. He secretly released his soul consciousness to look around. There were no other demon beasts. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he unconsciously sneered. That flood dragon was naturally not a demon beast of the Legacy Realm, but Ao Zhan of the East Sea Dragon Palace. Speaking of which, Ao Zhan and the others were also 5th-level essence energy. In the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the Hidden Immortal Continent, they were demons that could do whatever they wanted. Unfortunately, when they came here, facing a demon beast that had lived for who knows how many years, they could only flee in panic. The first demon beast to enter the Legacy Realm was a Thunder Flood Dragon. That Thunder Flood Dragon was extremely sensitive to the aura of the Dragon Clan. It roared and urged the lightning to chase after Ao Zhan, Ao Qian, and Ao Shui. It even left behind a low-level demon like Old Demon Jifeng. Zhu Mei and the other demons wanted to help the 3 dragons. Unfortunately, when the 6 demons were about to join forces to kill the Thunder Flood Dragon, there were immediately other demon beasts that flew over to help. As such, the 6 demons had no choice but to flee. What made Ao Zhan feel the most humiliated was that the 3 demonic beasts were being watched closely by the Thunder Flood Dragon. However, after escaping for half a day, the Thunder Flood Dragon summoned the other demonic beasts to attack them again. For the sake of Ao Qian's safety, Ao Zhan had no choice but to stay behind to fend off the enemies. He even used a secret technique to lure the Thunder Flood Dragon and the other demonic beasts to the side. At this moment, he had just escaped the pursuit of the Thunder Flood Dragon and the other demonic beasts. He revealed his true form and hid here to catch his breath, just like Xiao Hua. Of course, for his own safety, Ao Zhan didn't dare to release his Yuan Shun. This was because he realized that although the demonic beasts in the Cold Spirit Valley didn't have Yuan Shun, they were very sensitive to Yuan Shun. Their kind of instinctive aura was also very effective. Die! Ao Zhan suddenly heard the words of a Confucian cultivator from the hidden immortal continent. Then, dozens of heavy blows fell from the sky like falling stars. There was even a human figure wielding a long staff falling from the sky. You, who are you? Ao Zhan hurriedly shouted. Are you also here to train in the Cold Spirit Valley? Unfortunately, in a hurry, Ao Zhan instinctively spoke in the dragon language. How could Xiao Hua understand? Boom! The divine will hammer angrily fell, smashing right on top of Ao Zhan's scales. The scales that originally had some scars sank deep with a poof sound, and a trace of blood seeped out. Ao Zhan screamed, no longer caring about hiding his body. The huge dragon body rolled, and the dragon tail rolled towards Xiao Hua. Hit! Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff was originally aimed at Ao Zhan's dragon head. Now, he could only turn around, and the wishful steel staff swept the dragon tail. Woo! Ao Zhan cried out in pain. His dragon tail rolled back, and Xiao Hua was also sent flying into the sky by the dragon tail. At the same time, dozens of divine sense hammers landed on Ao Zhan's body one after another. Ao Zhan either waved his silver spear to block or raised his fist to strike back. However, there were still some divine sense hammers that landed on Ao Zhan's face. Damn it! Xiao Hua rushed into the sky and saw that the divine will hammers were not effective. His body flashed with golden light, and the heavenly law embodiment technique was displayed. The wishful steel staff in his hand turned into nearly 100 feet in size. The 100 feet tall Dharma body raised the wishful steel staff and said anxiously, Evil creature, hit him as well. Wang Wang. Ao Zhan also couldn't take it anymore. His dragon body curled up and returned to his original size. His several 100 feet long body was like a giant mountain that rushed towards Xiao Hua. Moreover, his dragon head opened and a dragon aura that was several 100 feet long mixed with thousands of strands of golden energy shot towards Xiao Hua like an incomparably sharp flying sword. Go! Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He waved his hand and took out the seal of the Overturn the Sea. Although it was not as arrogant as outside the relic world, under the urging of the nascent soul, it also turned into 100 feet in size, ready to block in front of the dragon Qi. But at this moment, caw-caw, there was a piercing sound, and a big bird fell from the sky like lightning. This big bird was very strange. Its wings flashed with golden light, and the purple-gold sarcoma on its stork-like head was particularly obvious. He suddenly understood, and hurriedly transmitted in the language of the hidden immortal continent. Fellow immortal, I'm not a demonic beast. I'm from the dragon clan of the East Sea Dragon Palace. When Xiao Hua heard Aozhan's words, he was even more astonished than Aozhan. He didn't expect that there was actually a non-demonic beast in the legacy world. Moreover, this demonic beast was actually from the East Sea Dragon Palace. Ouch! Xiao Hua hurriedly urged his magic power to stop the soaring dragon shears. Seeing that unbelievably sharp golden light flash back in front of his eyes, Aozhan's heart slightly jumped. Normally, he wouldn't care about Xiao Hua's attack. But now, his body was injured, and there was a demonic beast chasing behind him. He didn't want to fight with Xiao Hua head-on. You're a dragon of the East Sea Dragon Palace? Xiao Hua withdrew the soaring dragon shears, and his figure was still flying. He asked while being on guard. Aozhan withdrew his dragon form and turned into his human form. He replied, Yes, this one is a dragon guard of the East Sea Dragon Palace. Aozhan, I wonder if fellow immortal. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Xiao Hua hurriedly transmitted, Shu, quickly hide with me. Then, Xiao Hua didn't finish speaking, and his figure landed beside a huge rock. His figure rapidly shrank and stood there like a stick. At first glance, it was absolutely impossible to find him. How could Aozhan have Xiao Hua's rich experience in escaping? He quickly scanned with his elemental will, but he still couldn't find the place. Quickly go, there's a tree hole above the huge tree. It'll be good if you can slightly hide your aura. Xiao Hua saw Aozhan still standing there foolishly, and couldn't help but shout while pointing at a huge tree. Oh, okay. Aozhan followed Xiao Hua's finger and flew over, not even using his elemental will to look. Swoosh! Aozhan was indeed a great master with 5th-grade elemental energy. Although he didn't cultivate the disguise secret technique like Xiao Hua, he still shrank his figure and hid in the tree hole. However, Aozhan was still nervous. He didn't have the confidence to conceal his aura and not be discovered by the golden-winged Great Peng. Chapter 3771. Aozhan felt a little sad when he saw the auras surging towards him from all directions. He started to blame himself for trusting Xiao Hua so easily. Aozhan couldn't help but want to transform and escape again. However, at this moment, there was an angry roar. Another giant beast flew over from the distance. This giant beast was also a few 100 feet in size. There were a few broom-like wings on its back. Its body emitted a dark gray light. Once the giant beast appeared, it immediately pounced towards the golden-winged Great Peng. Jie! How could the golden-winged Great Peng be afraid? With a scream, it gave up on Aozhan and pounced towards the mutated beast. The other 10 demonic beasts also stopped at the same time. They either hid at the side or quickly escaped. Run! Aozhan was still dumbfounded as he watched the 2 mutated beasts fight. While he was dumbfounded, Xiao Hua's voice transmission rang in his ears. Xiao Hua's figure swayed like the wind and quickly escaped in a direction. Aozhan really admired Xiao Hua's godlike escaping ability. He didn't hesitate to follow behind Xiao Hua. It was unknown whether Aozhan's luck was too bad or Xiao Hua's luck was exhausted. The 2 of them only escaped for a moment. Rumble! A thunderous sound came from the side. The thunder flood dragon that was shaken off by Aozhan was chasing after him at lightning speed. Its ferocious eyes contained a kind of anger, as if it was being teased by Aozhan. Immortal friend! Run! Aozhan hurriedly shouted. This thunder flood dragon can smell my aura. It's not easy for me to hide. I can't implicate you." As he spoke, Aojan took out an extremely small pearl from the heaven and earth bracelet on his arm. Inside it flashed lightning. "What is this?" Seeing Aojan take out the pearl, Xiao Hua's yuan will swept across the thunder flood dragon and then looked at the thunder pearl in Aojan's hand. His heart moved and he asked curiously, "Immortal friend, what are you doing with this item?" "The thunder flood dragon likes to eat lightning. This is condensed from the lightning of the 9 heavens. I'm using this item to lure the thunder flood dragon away." Aojan looked at the thunder flood dragon nervously and said absent-mindedly. Xiao Hua smiled and shouted, "Immortal friend, I see that you have injuries on your body. If I'm not wrong, you should be injured by the thunder flood dragon. If you use the thunder pearl, I'm afraid it won't work. How about this? I'll help you lure the thunder flood dragon away and you only need to pay a small price." "Oh, you?" Aojan couldn't believe it. Although Xiao Hua's ability to escape was high, his strength couldn't compare to his. "The thunder flood dragon will be here soon. Is fellow immortal still hesitating?" Xiao Hua hastily urged. Aojan took a deep breath and asked, "Speak." Xiao Hua smiled like a little fox and said, "Immortal friend, you only need to give me a copy of the Jade Eyes book regarding the dragon language. What do you want these Jade Eyes for?" Aojan was truly puzzled. Xiao Hua's request was far beyond his expectations. He even kindly reminded him, the dragon language can only be used with a dragon body and dragon chi. Not only is it useless for immortal friend, it's also useless for the demon race. "You don't have to worry about what I do. If your dragon palace doesn't have this taboo, fellow immortal can consider giving it to me." Xiao Hua hastily pointed and said, "The thunder flood dragon will arrive in an instant. There isn't much time left for fellow immortal." Aojan pondered for a moment, then took out a jade eye from his universe bracelet. He handed it over to Xiao Hua as if he was holding a chicken rib and said, "Thank you, fellow immortal." After he finished speaking, Aojan didn't dare to reveal his dragon body and quickly flew towards a place. "Fellow immortal, return to the place where the golden-winged Pong and the demon beast were fighting in less than an hour. That place is definitely safe." Seeing Aojan flying away in a hurry, Xiao Hua satisfactorily threw the jade eye to the dragon vein Xiao Hua and kindly reminded him. Aojan, who was flying far away, was slightly stunned. However, he immediately understood in his heart. Without turning his head, he raised his right hand and gave Xiao Hua a thumbs up. However, why does the thumb of the dragon claw look like a bent branch? Rumble. Xiao Hua faintly smiled. Lightning surged around his body, and he actually flew towards the thunder flood dragon. Roar. The thunder flood dragon opened its big mouth and spat out lightning. However, not only was Xiao Hua's escape technique fast, his figure was even more nimble. He practically dodged the lightning in the nick of time. Then, his divine sense struck the thunder flood dragon like a hammer. Without caring whether it succeeded or not, he flew towards the golden-winged Pong without turning his head. Roar! The thunder flood dragon was once again teased. Couldn't help but become furious. It roared and pounced towards Xiao Hua. However, who would have thought that when Xiao Hua took the risk to fly closer, he suddenly fell to the ground like a small stone. After that, there was no after that, because a crazy pillar of fire sprayed towards the thunder flood dragon from the place where Xiao Hua disappeared. The thunder flood dragon was caught off guard and was actually sprayed all over. The thunder flood dragon didn't have the time to look at Xiao Hua, who had already used the wood escape technique to quickly escape from the huge tree. Lightning surged around its body and it joined the battle. In no more than a moment, the surrounding several hundred li was a mess. There were countless deep pits on the ground, gravel was everywhere, and chunks of huge trees were lying in disarray. In particular, a chaotic and tyrannical aura was flowing incessantly. There weren't any demonic beasts that would linger in the vicinity. This kind of large-scale battle was not uncommon in the legacy world. It didn't matter who won or lost. The victor would be complacent and take this place as their own territory. However, the victor wouldn't stay here for the time being. They could only return to their lair to recuperate. The wind was calm and the waves were calm just now. Therefore, the instigator Xiao Hua stealthily used the wind escape technique. His figure stuck close to the ground and flew over. The messy, huge rocks and huge trees were the best cover. Xiao Hua's soul consciousness also wasn't easily detected by demonic beasts. All of this ensured that he wasn't in any danger for the time being. Damn it! Xiao Hua flew while looking for a suitable place to hide. His mouth was still cursing. After flying around randomly, I seem to only know the whereabouts of the holy bloodline. Even if I want to find the other bloodlines, it's impossible. Also, the ground of this legacy world is too shameless. There's actually no way to use the earth escape technique. Thinking about how he wanted to use the earth escape technique after using the wood escape technique, he unexpectedly encountered many small demonic beasts that could attack magic power defense within the huge rocks of the mountain peak. Xiao Hua was secretly unhappy. Fellow immortal. Xiao Hua saw that there was a gap between several huge rocks. Just as he was about to fly over, he heard Ao Zhan's voice. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that Ao Zhan's body had shrunk to a very small size, curling up in the gap. If one didn't look carefully, it wouldn't be easy to find him. Hee, fellow immortal, you've arrived first. Xiao Hua smiled and also flew to the other side of the huge tree. Seeing that it was safe, he hid there. Ao Zhan transmitted his voice. Thank you for your help, fellow immortal. Hee. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Zhan, thought about the jade eyes in his meridians, and said with a smile, I'm Xiao Hua of the Dao sect. I didn't know that fellow immortal Ao was a dragon general of the Dragon Palace. I've offended you. It doesn't matter. Ao Zhan didn't care and said with a smile, the ignorant are not guilty. I'm indeed somewhat similar to the demonic beasts in the Cold Spirit Valley. You can't blame fellow immortal Xiao. Cold Spirit Valley? Xiao Hua frowned, but immediately felt relieved. It was indeed normal for the human race and the Dragon Palace to have two names for the same place. After thinking for a while, he felt that although his goal was the same as Ao Zhan's, his bloodline was definitely different. There might not be any conflict. Moreover, Ao Zhan gave Xiao Hua a good impression. So Xiao Hua probed, when did fellow immortal Ao come in? Can you find the path to that place? That place? Path? Now it was Ao Zhan's turn to be surprised. Ao Zhan wasn't stupid and felt that it was a little strange. He said with a smile, I came with a few fellow immortals. I'm afraid we've been here for several hours. However, I came here to accompany my family's little prince to gain experience. I haven't reached the place that fellow immortal mentioned, to gain experience. Oh? Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and thought to himself. He had some connections with the Dragon Palace. Previously, there was Shen Cheng from the West Sea Dragon Palace, and then there was Ao Shui from the East Sea Dragon Palace. However, both of them were cunning and weak. They might not know the secrets of the Dragon Palace or the Dragon Island. In particular, Xiao Hua and Ao Shui had some grudges. Xiao Hua wanted to shape Little White's body, so he had to deal with the Dragon Palace and find out the secret of shaping the body from the Dragon Palace. Ao Zhan, the Dragon Guard of the East Sea Dragon Palace, didn't look much different from Ao Shui, but he acted in an open and upright manner. Xiao Hua didn't know much about Ao Zhan, but just now, Ao Zhan took out the Thunder Pearl and was willing to lead the Thunder Flood Dragon away. Also, whether the dragon language Jade Eyes was important or not was also important. If it was Shen Cheng or Ao Shui, they might not have dared to give it to Xiao Hua casually. However, this Ao Zhan didn't say anything and gave it to Xiao Hua decisively. His position in the Dragon Palace was also very high. Therefore, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and made a decision. He asked with a smile, although this is the first time I met fellow immortal Ao, this Xiao can be sure that when fellow immortal Ao and your young prince entered the Cold Spirit Valley to gain experience, they were brought in by someone else. Oh, or a demon. Ao Zhan's round eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. His ability to escape might not be as good as Xiao Hua's, but he was definitely more scheming than Xiao Hua. He asked with a smile, fellow immortal Xiao, Do you mean that the demon who brought me and has some secrets about me? This Xiao doesn't dare to say whether there are secrets or not. I wonder if fellow immortal Ao can answer a few questions of this Xiao first? Xiao Hua asked with confidence. Of course. Ao Zhan nodded. Fellow immortal Ao, you don't have to tell this Xiao where you came in, but can you tell me how you came in? Xiao Hua threw out the first question. Ao Zhan thought for a moment and briefly explained. It seems that the demon who brought fellow immortal Ao in also had a token of this place. Xiao Hua said with a smile. I just don't know if he could get the token again after coming in. Was there anything strange on his face? Of course. Ao Zhan said again. Okay, then this Xiao will ask fellow immortal Ao again. Does fellow immortal Ao know a way to let the dragon soul reconstruct the dragon body? Xiao Hua asked with a very calm face. Of course. Ao Zhan answered without hesitation. Chapter 3772. However, after answering these two words, Ao Zhan didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, almost stretched out a hand from his ear. The specific method. Xiao Hua was a little embarrassed. He knew what Ao Zhan meant and asked, Can fellow immortal Ao tell me? No. Ao Zhan shook his head slightly. This is a secret of my dragon palace. I can't reveal it. Moreover, I don't know what this has to do with that demon. Of course not. Xiao Hua didn't dare to ask more, and said with a smile. However, from fellow immortal Ao's analysis, I can conclude that that demon must be hiding something from fellow immortal Ao. As for what purpose, I don't know. Impossible, right? How could he be so daring? Thinking about King Mulu, Ao Zhan didn't dare to believe it and asked in a low voice. If possible, can fellow immortal Xiao tell me what he's hiding? That place, what is it? Speaking up to hear, Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't hide anything. Moreover, with the original intention of casting a long line to catch a big fish, Xiao Hua didn't interrogate Ao Zhan about the secret of the dragon body remodeling and told him about the legacy world in detail. See, legacy world. How is this possible? Ao Shuai's eyes widened and he couldn't help but gasp. The legacy world is just a legend. A legend. Xiao Hua asked back with a smile. There's no need for me to say more. Look at the desolate land. There are so many demonic beasts and such large bodies. Can it be a simple place for the demonic race to train? Fellow immortal Xiao should be a human, right? Ao Shuai didn't answer and asked instead. Of course. Xiao Hua nodded. Anyone with eyes can see that. Ao Shuai smiled helplessly. Then how did fellow immortal Xiao come in? What does this legacy world have to do with fellow immortal Xiao? Of course I came in with a token, Xiao Hua explained. I have a true bloodline and the token was passed down by my ancestors. My ancestors have been looking for the legacy world to purify the bloodline of my clansmen, but they couldn't find it. I was just lucky. I advise fellow immortal to give up on this idea. Ao Zhan smiled and said, This legacy world does have the bloodline of a primordial great demon, but that bloodline is incomparably pure and powerful. Only demons with extremely close bloodlines like us can withstand the violence within. Fellow immortal, you are a human. Although you have the bloodline of the true bloodline, your fleshly body is incomparable to that of us demons. Once you come into contact with the true bloodline, your fleshly body will explode. Fellow immortal, you don't have to worry about that. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I'm just asking fellow immortal Ao. I don't have any conflicts of interest with fellow immortal Ao, right? Of course. Ao Zhan said proudly, even if fellow immortal Xiao obtains the true dragon's blood, Don't worry, this Xiao does not covet the true dragon's blood at all. If I obtain it, I can even give it to fellow immortal Ao. Xiao Hua's words were ambiguous, making Ao Zhan feel that he knew where the true dragon's blood was. Fellow immortal Xiao, you mean? Ao Zhan narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua thoughtfully. If we cooperate, we will both benefit. If we separate, we will both suffer. Why don't you and I work together? Xiao Hua said, hitting the nail on the head. Yes, fellow immortal Xiao is a benevolent and righteous person. Although he likes to take advantage of others, he is trustworthy. Eozhan nodded. I feel that this matter can be done. All right, since fellow immortal thinks it can be done, we will discuss it further. When Xiao Hua heard Eozhan say that he likes to take advantage of others, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. However, he still smiled and said, Fellow immortal, you can tell me who the demon that brought you here is. We can discuss how to deal with it. When Eozhan just said the name of the Stag King, Xiao Hua looked as if he had seen a ghost. He immediately thought of Ao Shuai and almost lost his voice. Fellow immortal Ao, you didn't come with Ao Shuai, right? Oh? Fellow immortal Xiao knows the inspector of my East Sea Dragon Palace? Eozhan was slightly stunned. Is there a rat beside you? Xiao Hua was completely convinced. Eozhan nodded. Forget it. Xiao Hua sighed. Really? Enemies are bound to meet. Since Xiao Hua wanted to cooperate with Eozhan, he naturally couldn't hide it. He briefly explained the previous matter. Eozhan didn't have any strange expression. He nodded and said, So fellow immortal and Ao Shuai have such a relationship. I only know about the Star-Picking Tower's Dragon Bone and the Longevity Guarding Paradise River. I didn't know that fellow immortal Xiao was also involved. Fellow immortal Zhao's words also confirmed what Ao Shuai said. This matter is very important to my Dragon Palace. Compared to these matters, fellow immortal Zhao's conflict with Ao Shuai is nothing. As for old demon Jifeng, he is just a little rat. It's fine to ignore him. Good. Xiao Hua was very happy. He smiled and said, Then let us discuss how to get the true blood. Of course we have to discuss. Eozhan said with a double meaning. We might even need fellow immortal Zhao's help. He. Understood. Once Xiao Hua heard Eozhan's words, he knew that the so-called East Sea Dragon Palace's young prince was involved. He had never seen any bullshit young prince. That young prince might be able to help him, but who told Xiao Hua to have no fate with the young prince? The two communicated with each other for almost an hour. Sure enough, no demon beasts came to disturb them in this messy land. After the two finished their discussion, they rested for a meal. Gradually, slightly smaller demon beasts appeared in the surroundings. Fellow immortal Ao, I'm leaving. Then what about the so-called reward? Eozhan probed again. Zhu Mei also withdrew her origin sense and said curiously, Of course it's the demonic cores of these demonic beasts. Could there be something else? Damn it. Eozhan cursed. Do you think we can kill the Thunder Flood Dragon? Even without the Thunder Flood Dragon, we can still kill demonic beasts with the strength of hair removal, intelligence opening, and light gathering. Zhu Mei seemed a little excited. These demonic beasts don't cultivate. They purely rely on the power of the stars and moon. Their naturally formed demonic cores, skin, flesh, and blood are all good things. If they don't cultivate, they don't have the qualifications to be included in the ranks of hair removal, intelligence opening, and light gathering. Eozhan sneered, knowing Zhu Mei's plan. Ga. Zhu Mei's beak moved up and down, as if she was smacking her lips. She was very disdainful of the Dragon Clan's arrogance. Of course, the Dragon Clan was included in the ancient Demon Clan. However, no one in the Demon Clan today knew why the Dragon Clan separated from the Demon Clan. However, it was obvious that the Dragon Clan looked down on the ordinary Demon Clan and was unwilling to be associated with them. Everyone could see their arrogance. Where's the Mu Lu King? Eozhan asked again. Where did you agree to wait with him? Like you, we were separated. We were in a hurry and didn't agree to a place. Zhu Mei looked at some low-level demonic beasts in the distance and said, It's just a general direction. Chapter 3773. Let's go. We'll kill our way over. Eozhan's figure gradually flashes with auspicious clouds. The more powerful strange beasts in the valley have just fought. We can take advantage of this opportunity to enter. Kill! Zhu Mei coldly shouts. Flames shoot out from her body in all directions as she flies towards the battlefield. However, under Zhu Mei's intentional control, the flames that can soar to the sky are not particularly conspicuous. As expected, I can hear it. Although it's a bit vague, when I cultivate it in the future, I'll definitely be able to hear it clearly. Xiao Hua has already flown far away, leaving only a trace of soul consciousness to scout the surroundings. Seeing Zhu Mei and Aozhan fly out to kill strange beasts, he also smiles evilly. Damn it! Why didn't this old man think of it? Even if I can't get any holy bloodline, it's also good to get some demon beast flesh and demon core. Who knows, these flesh and bones might have some uses. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua naturally thinks of the Mo Zhao corpse he obtained in the Mo Zhao Black Forest. The brain matter is really useful. The Buddha's heavenly eye was successfully cultivated in this way. Moreover, he obtained the essence of the void-penetrating beast in the void. At this time, the essence was gradually absorbed by the delirium transcendence eye. Although the heavenly eye was cultivated by the Buddha's relic Bodhi, Xiao Hua's delirium transcendence, I can also borrow it. What makes Xiao Hua especially happy is that in addition to seeing further, the delirium transcendence eye has a new function, which is to hear some secret sound transmissions. Just now, Xiao Hua left his soul consciousness to try out this newly obtained ability. Although he is far away from Aozhan and Zhu Mei and might not be able to hear anything clearly, this is enough to make Xiao Hua jump for joy. The delirium transcendence eye itself doesn't have this ability. It should be the Buddha's heavenly eye. The so-called heavenly eye can see everything in the world. Everything is not just an illusion, it can also be sound and so on. In the past, didn't Master Qing Chun of the Snowy Mountain use heavenly ear to see everything? It's normal for this Xiao to hear everything with heavenly eye. Some Mo Zhao have such an effect. Then what about the strange beasts in the legacy world? Thinking of this, the greedy Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel a fire burning in his heart. Nowadays, primal stones could no longer move him. What he loved the most was the flesh and yao cores of these strange beasts. The legacy world was naturally a barrier. Unlike the outside world, the sun star and the moon star in the sky didn't rise and fall alternately. Xiao Hua's soul consciousness was also very useful. After killing for half a day, he had a lot of harvest. Although he also encountered a few extremely powerful strange beasts, Xiao Hua relied on his soul consciousness and escape technique to escape. He simply couldn't bear the brunt of their attacks. Facing such an opponent, those strange beasts could only respond with a roar and chase to the edge of their own forces before stopping. Haha! What a great harvest! After escaping from a strange beast that looked like an earthworm but was even larger than the thunder flood dragon, Xiao Hua watched from afar as the strange beast spat out strange bubbles. When the bubbles landed on the ground, they corroded the huge rocks on the ground. Xiao Hua stretched his body and laughed loudly. Then, Xiao Hua looked to the left and said with a bitter smile, "This direction seems to be where Aozhan and I agreed to meet. Unfortunately, I didn't dare to let Fuji win out. Otherwise, I would have been able to confirm it. Oh, it should be right." Right at this moment, several roars and wails could be heard in the distance. Several streaks of demonic aura and multicolored light soared into the sky. It was rather chaotic. Xiao Hua smiled. He knew that it was Aozhan and the others who had arrived. He urged his body and flew into the distance. Not long after, a strange beast that looked like a mantis flew out of the giant forest. Its long forearms had sharp pincers that were more than 10 feet long. Every time it waved, thin and long black lines appeared on the edge of the pincers, as if it was tearing the void. The strength of this strange beast was evident. This thing is somewhat similar to the strange beast I encountered in the void. Xiao Hua urged his transcendence golden body and took out the wishful steel rod. Looking at this strange beast, he secretly thought, "It's a pity that the spirit-killing light hasn't been refined yet. Otherwise, I could try using it." Fight! Seeing that the strange beast's wings were emitting a breathtaking noise as it flew over aggressively, the aura used to perceive the enemy had already swept over. Xiao Hua raised the wishful steel rod and rushed over with a loud shout. Strange beasts that could occupy their territory were, of course, powerful. Although this strange mantis-like beast could not be compared to the strange beast in the void, its body was also tough. The sharpness of its pincers and the strength of its arms were beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. Xiao Hua could only fight this strange beast to a draw with the wishful steel rod and the heavenly staff technique. Of course, while Xiao Hua was surprised, he still followed his plan and retreated in the direction of Ao Zhan and the other demons. Ao Zhan and the other demons were naturally in the distance. With the experience of killing mutated beasts and the tactic of roaming, Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan did not spend much effort to find old demon Jifeng, Ao Shui, and the other demons. As for King Mu Lu, there was no trace of him at first. Ao Zhan did not know whether the Stag King was intentional or not, but he already believed Xiao Hua's words. This surprise also had a flash of panic. Although this panic was very subtle, it was clearly seen by Ao Zhan. It can't be? Zhu Mei also found it strange and hurriedly released her Yuan Xin. When she saw it clearly, she said in surprise, "No, that's not right. This does not seem to be a demon. It's a human." Human? As they spoke, all the demons released their Yuan Xin. When they saw the appearance of the Dharma body clearly, whether it was the Stag King, Ao Shui, or the old demon Jifeng, a look of disbelief appeared on their faces. Xiao Hua? This is Xiao Hua. No, it can't be Xiao Hua. The old demon Jifeng really did not dare to see the awe-inspiring Xiao Hua actually gamble with a Zhou beast. This human strength is not bad. Zhu Mei spread her wings and said hurriedly, "Although he is not a match for this Zhou beast and may be able to escape from the claws of the Zhou beast, he will be of help. Let's go meet him and train together." No, the Stag King did not hesitate to stop her. "Zhu Mei, this Cold Spirit Valley is the sacred training ground of our demon race. It was left behind from the ancient times. No matter how strong this human is, he should not covet the ancient grace of our demon race. Moreover, in my opinion, it is precisely because of this human's appearance here that it caused the demon beasts to mutate and caused our training to become so unpredictable. If we want to train here and let the demon beasts in the Cold Spirit Valley settle down, we must first kill this human." Ao Zhan laughed. The old demon Jifeng gritted his teeth and said, "That's right. If it was someone else, this old man may be able to tolerate it a little. However, this Xiao Hua has repeatedly ruined this old man's plans. Now that I have seen this demon here, it is his death." Chapter 3774. Ao Zhan saw that old monster Jifeng was so angry that he actually called himself Old Man. Obviously, he hated Xiao Hua to the bone. He couldn't help but look at Ao Shui. "What do you think?" "Me?" Ao Shui was startled and hurriedly smiled. "Little Prince and General Ao are here. I don't have the right to speak. Little Prince, please make the decision." "Kill! You must kill!" Ao Qian shouted proudly. "This is the training ground for us demons. How can we allow humans to covet it?" "All right," Ao Zhan nodded. "Since Little Prince wants to kill, then let's kill." As he spoke, Ao Zhan raised his dragon head to the sky and was about to roar. But at this moment, Zhu Mei, who had always been at odds with Ao Qian, sneered. "What a bunch of idiots! Strange beasts are everywhere in the Cold Spirit Valley. We were chased away by the strange beasts before we even started our training. Now that a helper has finally appeared, regardless of whether he is a human or a demon, we should try to rope him in. How could we kill him without even asking? Don't you want to leave this Cold Spirit Valley? Don't you think so, Stag King?" This Stag King obviously knew that Zhu Mei was being serious with Ao Qian. He definitely had to stand on Zhu Mei's side. But if he let Xiao Hua go, who knew if Xiao Hua knew about this legacy realm? Stag King was very hesitant. He didn't dare to gamble. "Oh right, Stag King." Ao Zhan suddenly thought of something and hurriedly shouted, "I haven't asked you yet. Why is this Cold Spirit Valley training only the beginning? How can we get out of this Cold Spirit Valley? I don't care about training. I want to ensure the safety of my little prince." "That's right." Ao Shui suddenly realized and hurriedly asked, "Mu Lu King, Where is the exit of this cold spirit valley? The entrance from before is already gone. Do we still need to rely on? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Ao Qian said angrily. Oh Shuai, go and kill that human. Humph, let's see who dares. Zhu Mei snorted coldly as the flames around her body surged out. I? Ao Qian was furious. He hesitated as he looked at Ao Shuai. Zhifeng shrank his head back and was about to fly out when Ao Zhan chuckled from the side. Young prince, this general feels that Zhu Mei is right. Although we can't possibly be in the same boat as this human brat, wouldn't it be better to let him be a shield and charge at the front? Ao Qian was naturally afraid of Ao Zhan. Hearing Ao Zhan's words, he said coldly, Your despicable methods really make this king feel uncomfortable. Forget it, do as you please. Seeing that Ao Qian had agreed, Stag King felt even more uneasy. He really regretted hiding it from him earlier. Unfortunately, at this point he couldn't explain himself. He thought of an old saying of the human race. It's easy to tell a lie, but it's difficult to make up 100 lies to cover it up. Let's go. The golden-winged rock is chasing us. Ao Zhan sneered in his heart. He raised his head and roared a few times. He urged Zhu Mei, We'll go help this human cultivator first, and then ask him if he has a way to avoid the golden-winged rock. He's just a human cultivator, how would he know? Stag King bit his lips and said hesitantly, Besides, will he cooperate with us? Zhu Mei glanced at Stag King and said, Why not? Since he can enter Cold Spirit Valley, he naturally has other tokens. Maybe he knows other entrances and exits. You discuss with him and choose the safest exit. Oh, okay. Stag King secretly complained and could only nod in agreement. He followed the demons and flew towards Xiaohua. You human cultivator. I'll help you. Zhu Mei used hidden immortal continent's human language to send a message. She spread her wings and rushed towards Xiang and Beast. The red flames in her mouth flew out like a fireball. Ah? You? Xiaohua naturally looked at the flying Zhu Mei with surprise. He almost smashed the wishful staff in his hand. Don't be afraid. I'm not a demon beast of Cold Spirit Valley. I'm Zhu Mei of Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Zhu Mei blocked the sharp claws of Xiang and Beast for Xiaohua and shouted, I'm training in this Cold Spirit Valley. At this time, Stag King also flew over and shouted, Xiaohua, why did you come to my demon race's Cold Spirit Valley to train? Xiaohua saw Stag King and his face turned pale with fright. He then scanned the distance with his divine sense and was even more surprised. He urged his spiritual power as if he was about to activate an escape technique. However, Xiaohua still said curiously, This is clearly the 100 Demons Mountain used by my human race for training. How did it become the demon race's Cold Spirit Valley? Stag King heard and his hanging heart immediately calmed down. Seeing Xiaohua's cautious look, he hurriedly smiled and said, Fellow immortal Xiao, don't be afraid. Whether it's your human race's 100 Demons Mountain or my demon race's Cold Spirit Valley, both are places for training. Moreover, it's not the first time we've met. Although there were some grudges before, since we've met again, what do those grudges count for? Why don't you and I work together in the same boat and complete this training to the end? How could Xiaohua believe Stag King? While his figure flew into the distance, he shouted, Fellow immortal Zhu, thank you for your help. However, there's a difference between you and me, humans and demons. I just happened to get an opportunity and inexplicably barged into this place. It's better if I don't disturb your training. I'll find the exit myself. Roar. Ao Zhan was already impatient. He scanned the approaching golden-winged Great Peng behind him with his divine sense. He flew and landed not far from Xiaohua and shouted, You human race, I'll give you a chance to choose. Do you want to die in my hands? Or do you want to train with me first? Roar. While speaking, Ao Zhan also flew to the left of Xiaohua and blocked his escape path. Xiaohua's face revealed bitterness. He pondered for a moment and said, Fellow immortals, you're all powerful. Why do you have to make things difficult for a small human cultivator? If fellow immortals let me go, I can give you all the gains I've obtained from the trial. Hee hee. Ao Jean said with a smile. The gains from your training are yours. We don't need them. You just need to tell me how to get out of here. When Stag King heard this, he couldn't help but be shocked. At first, he felt that Ao Jean was suspicious of him. However, when he saw the look of realization on Xiaohua's face, he also understood that this was Ao Jean's stalling tactic. He couldn't help but laugh at his own suspicious thoughts. Hee hee, fellow immortal, you must be from the dragon race of the Dragon Palace, right? I wonder which Dragon Palace of the Four Seas you belong to? Xiaohua seemed to have seen through Ao Jean's thoughts and said with a smile, I naturally know where the exit is. However, do you think I'll tell you? Oh, fellow immortal, you don't have to think about soul-searching. I'm a Tao sect cultivator. I'm much more proficient in this aspect than you. As long as I'm willing, I can erase the memories of this place in a few breaths. Damn it, let's go. Zhu Mei forced the Xiangyi beast away with a mouthful of scarlet flames and even shattered its claws. He might not be afraid of the Xiangyi beast, but he was afraid of the golden-winged rock that was getting closer and closer. He couldn't help but curse and urge, I don't want your exit. I know where the exit of this cold spirit valley is. When Xiaohua heard this, his expression changed again. He seemed to understand that his value had decreased by a bit. He looked at the aggressive golden-winged rock in the distant sky and gritted his teeth. Fellow immortals, follow me. I've already gotten rid of this golden-winged rock. After speaking, Xiaohua took the lead and flew towards a place. All right. Ao Jean also flew up and said, If you can take us away from this golden-winged rock, I'll spare your life. The direction Xiaohua was flying in was naturally where the golden-winged Great Peng was previously injured. As he expected, the golden-winged Great Peng had already begun to slow down when there was still quite a distance between them and that place. When the demons and Xiaohua had completely flown into that place, the golden-winged Great Peng let out a few cries in midair in a very unwilling manner before turning around and flying away. Shoo! Xiaohua's expression didn't relax at all. He said in a low voice, Fellow immortals, don't release your origin sense. Follow me and fly in that direction. After speaking, Xiaohua flew to the ground in a serious manner. Sometimes he flew to the left and sometimes he flew to the right. When he flew to a place where huge trees grew, he carefully instructed the demons to hide. In a short moment, a strange centipede-like beast that was 1,000 zhang long flew across the sky. Its fierce aura swept across the sky and the ground, as if a king was inspecting his territory. After the centipede flew away, Xiaohua hurriedly led the demons to fly for a little less than an hour before stopping. He pulled away from Ao Jean and the other demons and said with a smile, All right, this place should be safe for the next 2 hours. That's right. Zhu Mei looked at Xiaohua and nodded. Human cultivators are indeed astute. My foresight is still extremely accurate. I'm afraid we 1,000 demon sacred realm demons wouldn't be able to grasp the timing so accurately. I wouldn't dare. Xiaohua replied. I've also almost lost my life several times before I learned a lesson. Perhaps I can use this to escape. Seeing that Xiaohua was valued by Zhu Mei, old demon Jifeng knew he couldn't make a move here. Chapter 3775. Eljan looked at Stag King and thought to himself. According to Xiaohua's words and Zhu Mei's performance, he could basically determine that Stag King was indeed hiding something, and this concealment was something even Zhu Mei didn't know about. Of course, he couldn't be sure if Zhu Mei really didn't know. At this moment, Ao Jean was in an extremely difficult position. Although Xiaohua wouldn't fight with him for the true dragon's blood, Xiaohua wasn't willing to tell him the way out. Obviously, this was Xiaohua's secret. If he wanted to leave this legacy world, he had to rely on Stag King's keepsake. However, he wasn't sure if he would know how to use the token he took from the Stag King. Even if he captured the Stag King, it was still unknown if he could get the method to leave the relic world from the Stag King's memories. Perhaps Ao Jean was looking forward to some unforeseen event after he obtained the true dragon's blood. but he didn't dare to place his hopes on it. He didn't dare to gamble with his life and Ao Qian's life. Moreover, there was Zhu Mei next to him. He didn't have full confidence in capturing Zhu Mei. "Why are you so long-winded?" Ao Qian said coldly. "Xiao Hua, Ao Shui just told me about the enmity between you two. To be honest, this isn't a special enmity. Isn't it just a broken Pegasus? Is there a need to go so far?" Yes, what little prince said is right. Old demon Jifeng, who was at the side, hurriedly expressed his position. Actually, it's all this lowly one's fault for being too shallow and scheming against fellow immortal Xiao. Today, this lowly one will speak openly to fellow immortal Xiao in front of the young prince. The grudges between fellow immortal Xiao and this lowly one will be written off. That's right. This is a true monster of my 1,000-monster sacred realm. Zhu Mei had the same opinion as Ao Qian and said with a smile, "There's no need to worry about such a small matter." Damn it, how can that be a small matter? Old monster Zhifeng's heart was bleeding. That's the blood essence of a radiant beast. You guys can't see it, but I care about it very much. Alright, since fellow Taoist Jifeng has spoken like this, then I have no choice but to express that I'm willing to advance and retreat together with all fellow Taoists and pass through this period of tempering in the 100-Demon Mountain. Xiao Hua spoke out hurriedly, seeming to be deeply afraid that old demon Jifeng would change his mind. The Stag King pondered on the side. Seeing that the situation was unstoppable, he smiled and said, "Immortal friend Xiao, you're training here alone. If you stay with us, you'll have a great advantage. Don't you think you should show some sincerity?" This, Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "How about this? It's not convenient for the Xiao to tell everyone where the specific exit of the 100-Monster Mountain is, but this Xiao can point out a general direction. What's the use of pointing in a direction? Besides, this king will not use your human race's exit." Aog said coldly. "Don't worry, little prince." Stag King laughed. "Xiao Hua pointing out a direction can at least be considered as sincerity. And if it's because of me, the exit I know of is not suitable, we can find another exit." "Xiao Hua, speak quickly," Ao Zhan said impatiently. "If you're unwilling, then you can leave by yourself." Yes. Xiao Hua nodded with a smile, then hurriedly pointed at the 3 places that didn't have the bloodline of the absolute saint. "It's there." The Stag King's heart was completely at ease. He smiled and said, "Seems like immortal friend Zhao's exit is completely different from my monster races." "Oh, so there's another exit?" Xiao Hua was also stunned, a strange expression appearing on his face. "Nonsense, the entrance is different, so the exit is naturally different." Zhan sneered, but suddenly he was startled again. He looked at Xiao Hua fiercely and shouted, "Speak! Did you follow behind us into the Cold Spirit Valley?" That's right. At this moment, old monster Jifeng also woke up and hurriedly added fuel to the fire. "He hid behind us and entered the Cold Spirit Valley. Otherwise, you waited behind us." Xiao Hua's mouth revealed a contemptuous smile. He clapped his hand and took out an ink cloud pupil. He said, "This Xiao naturally has my human race's ink cloud pupil. There's no need for me to follow behind you. Besides, with this Zhao's cultivation, can I hide behind you without being discovered? This king wants to see this ink cloud pupil." The Stag King stretched out his hand and said. Xiao Hua retracted his hand and kept the ink cloud pupil. He replied indifferently, "Impossible. If you don't believe this Xiao, then just pretend you never saw this Xiao. Do you think you can still escape from our hands?" Old monster Jifeng sneered. Demonic clouds appeared under his feet, ready to pounce at any time. "Ha ha!" Xiao Hua laughed loudly. "This Xiao can't escape, but in a moment, the strange beasts in this territory will come. This Xiao's spiritual sense can attract the attention of these strange beasts. Immortal friends, your spiritual sense shouldn't be able to escape their attention, right? Without this Zhao's secret technique, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to reach the exit, right?" Ao Qian was furious. Just as he was about to jump out, Ao Zhan hurriedly said, "Forget it. Since you're useful, why can't we train together? Ao Qian was a bit angry. He glanced at Ao Zhan with dissatisfaction. Ao Zhan smiled bitterly. He couldn't tell Ao Qian about his agreement with Xiao Hua. With Ao Qian's temper, wouldn't he immediately fall out with the Stag King? Even Zhu Mei was involved? Good. Xiao Hua clapped. We'll do as you say. How should I address you, immortal friend? Ao Zhan immediately reported his name to Xiao Hua, but didn't reveal Ao Qian's identity. Xiao Hua didn't care. He looked around and his expression changed. He hurriedly urged, "Not good. That strange beast has already come out. Let's go." Zhu Mei's expression changed even more. He didn't know how Xiao Hua sensed the strange beast's movements, but he didn't dare to release his spiritual sense. However, at this moment, Ao, a world-shaking roar sounded. A terrifying aura rushed towards them from afar. Who released their spiritual sense? Zhu Mei angrily scolded. Ao Qian shouted without any trace of politeness. Of course it's this king. If I don't look, who knows if Xiao Hua is telling the truth? Damn it! Zhu Mei knew Ao Qian wasn't wrong. However, he was still very angry that strange beasts were attracted. At this moment, old monster Zhifeng looked at Xiao Hua's figure in shock. He said in a low voice, Your wind escape technique has actually reached such a level. Humph, if you don't leave now, you won't have the chance to. Xiao Hua didn't answer. He didn't even turn his head. Little prince, let's go. Ao Zhan saw Xiao Hua's serious tone and knew he wasn't deliberately mystifying things. He hurriedly urged. A group of human monsters were fleeing in panic. Because of this strange beast's roar, many other strange beasts were attracted. If not for Xiao Hua's spiritual sense and Zhu Mei, Ao Zhan and Ao Qian's bitter battle, they wouldn't have been able to escape safely. Of course, it was also because of this that Zhu Mei and Ao Qian's killing intent towards Xiao Hua gradually disappeared. At least, before they found a way out, they wouldn't have any killing intent. The one leading the way was naturally still the Stag King. Although the path he took wasn't straight and they had to train and kill monsters along the way, the path the monsters took was quite a turn. However, as the monsters they encountered became stronger and stronger, the monsters also understood that this path should be correct. The exit of the training should be in the distance. As for Xiao Hua, although he didn't show it on his face, he muttered in his heart. Because the path the Stag King led was where the bloodline of the Absolute Saint was, it was already different from the direction Si Yinding pointed out. However, after thinking about it, Xiao Hua understood. He knew that there was probably more than one place in the legacy world where the bloodline of the ancient big monsters was stored. The bloodline of the fallen Gold Mountains Yu family might not be of a high level, so it might not be in the same place as the Stag King's bloodline. Therefore, when Ao Zhan occasionally asked about it via voice transmission, Xiao Hua also told him his speculations without hiding anything. However, in his heart, he was secretly thinking about how he could obtain the bloodline of the Absolute Saint without letting Zhu Mei, Ao Qian, and the other monsters know. After advancing for a few days, there were a few more fierce battles. Not only were Zhu Mei, Ao Qian, and Ao Zhan wounded, but even Xiao Hua's Transcendence golden body was torn in several places. A tall altar appeared in the distant sky. The Stag King pointed with his finger and said, Everyone, the exit of the Cold Spirit Valley is in front of us. As long as we kill our way to the altar, our training in the Cold Spirit Valley will be over. Motherfucker. This experience is too dangerous. No matter how proud Ao Qian was, he couldn't help but sigh at this time. I have also trained on the Dragon Island several times. Even the test on the Dragon Island seems to be not as fierce as the Cold Spirit Valley. Dragon Island. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Ao Zhan. In these few days, Ao Zhan was still very tight-lipped and didn't reveal the location of the Dragon Island at all. Ao Shui smiled and said, Young Lord is right. If it weren't for the Stag King's guidance and Xiao Hua's secret technique, our training would be 40% more difficult. Humph, it's more than 40%. Zhu Mei snorted coldly. We are simply opportunistic. How can this be considered training? How many strange beasts did you kill and how many monster cores did you get? This, Ao Shuai was a little embarrassed. At this time, Xiao Hua suddenly shouted, "Oh, no, I understand. This last part should be the final test of the 100 Monsters Mountain. There seems to be some incomplete records in my ink cloud pupil. I didn't know before, but now I understand. As long as we pass this place, there will be another way out of the altar inside." Yes, yes, that's right, the Stag King hurriedly echoed. As long as we pass the final test, our training will be over. As he spoke, the Stag King looked at his universe bracelet and smiled. Although this place is quite dangerous and is extremely unfavorable for our training, I have gained a lot. When I return to the 1,000 Monsters Sacred Realm, after a period of cultivation, I will definitely be able to enter. What kind of training is this? Ao Qian said unhappily. I almost became the food of the golden-winged rock. Young lord, Xiao Hua heard and his expression changed greatly. He hurriedly shouted, "You must be quiet. The monsters of the 100 Monsters Mountain are not to be talked about." Tisich. Ao Qian was somewhat familiar with Xiao Hua. He sneered and said, "If you have the ability, let the golden-winged rock come again." Chapter 3776. Call. At this moment, a clear cry came from afar. Wasn't that the golden-winged rock that Ao Qian, Ao Zhan, and Ao Shuai were very afraid of? Damn it, it's really like a ghost that won't go away. Ao Qian's mouth was very hard, and his expression was also very arrogant. But in the face of a Xiantian great enemy, how could he dare to be careless? As he spoke, his figure flew towards the direction of the altar, completely ignoring Xiao Hua. Ao Zhan and Ao Shuai also looked at the golden-winged rock in the distance, and hurriedly flew in. Humph! Zhu Mei sneered. Could this be the legendary escape? Zhu Mei and Ao Qian had been fighting all the way until now, when they rushed to the last level of the altar. This half a step late, in his eyes, was not a small victory. Seeing Zhu Mei also fly away, Xiao Hua looked at King Mulu and old monster Zhifeng and said with a smile, "It seems that dragon meat is more fragrant, spreading thousands of miles with the wind. Even at the entrance of the 100 Monster Mountain, it can still attract the golden-winged Great Peng." The golden-winged rock's reputation was not just for show. Even Zhu Mei had fled. How could Mulu King and Zhifeng not be scared? But the two demons had some small thoughts, so they managed to stay until the end. Zhifeng glanced at Xiao Hua and sneered. This old man feels that human meat is much more fragrant than dragon meat. Demons are demons. This Xiao disdains to be associated with them. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhifeng with contempt. He raised his head and laughed and flew after Zhu Mei. You. Zhifeng was so angry that his tail was trembling, and his rat claws pointed at Xiao Hua's back as he shouted. Mulu King watched Xiao Hua fly away, and his heart relaxed. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go. If you have the ability, go kill him." Aye. Zhifeng stuttered a few times, then gritted his teeth and said, "Don't worry. This old man will definitely not let him leave Cold Spirit Valley. Whether he leaves or not, it has nothing to do with this king." The Stag King said indifferently. He also looked at the distant horizon with lingering fear. He stepped on the demon cloud and chased after them. The 6 demons flew for less than an hour. They saw that the ground was very calm, and they didn't see any powerful demon beasts. The 6 demons didn't dare to release their primordial thoughts, but Xiao Hua used his soul consciousness to explore for a long time. He even looked at the altar several times, but he still didn't see anything unusual. How strange! Not only was Xiao Hua astonished, but even the Stag King and the other monsters were also bewildered. If something was out of the ordinary, then it was a monster. These monsters naturally understood this principle, so in this calm, no one dared to lower their guard. They were even more cautious as they flew towards the altar, not daring to be too fast or too slow. Swish, swish. Faintly, There seemed to be some kind of strange sound transmitted into Xiao Hua's slightly opened illusion breaker Dharma eye. Xiao Hua stared blankly. When he opened his Dharma eye to take a look, he found nothing. Judging from the Stag King's performance, there must be a true bloodline on the altar. As for whether there is true dragon blood, I don't know yet. Xiao Hua looked at the altar and thought to himself. However, according to this Zhao's perception, there must be a holy bloodline on the altar. In other words, although the outer layer of the altar wasn't the last layer of the trial, it was where the strongest demonic beasts resided to protect the altar. But ouch! Xiao Hua thought as he slowed down his flight. His eyes inadvertently looked at the ground, and he suddenly cried out involuntarily. What's wrong? Aozhan paid the most attention to Xiao Hua. When he heard Xiao Hua's cry, he hurriedly stopped and called out, Fellow immortal Xiao, did you find something? General Ao, look at the ground. Is it different from what we passed before? Xiao Hua frowned and stopped in midair. Different? Aozhan also stopped. He looked at the ground and said curiously, I don't see anything different. No, it's different. This ground is too clean, isn't it? That's right. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said, What we saw before was a desolate land. Whether it was the trees, rocks, or hills, they were all incomparably huge. Even the moss on the ground was frighteningly large. But here, not only are there no giant trees or rocks, even the ground is flat. There's no trace of moss or grass. There's more, Ao Shui said from the side. In other places, there are always bones, no matter how big or small they are. But here, there's not a single bone. Could it be that the demon beasts here want to devour even bones? There might not be any in the sky, but there might be some underground. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and looked at the ground. He thought of the small demon beasts he encountered in the giant rocks. Who? Zhu Mei suddenly opened her mouth. Her scarlet-red bird head looked behind the demons. Swish, 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 swish. Like a cool breeze, the light raindrops' dance became clearer in the demon's ears. Ma, ants. Flying ants. Xiao Hua's soul awareness swept across the area. He saw that within the range of 100 li to 1,000 li around the altar, hundreds of millions of ants were gushing out from the ground. Some crawled over, some raised their backs, and some fluttered their tiny wings and actually flew up. Seeing this, how could Xiao Hua not be surprised? Weren't these the flying ants that Song Longzi left behind in his cave? Song Longzi, the tribulation-transcending senior from Taoism, must have been here. As for how Song Longzi came in, whether he managed to break through the encirclement of these flying ants and reach the altar, and what he obtained, of course, Xiao Hua didn't know. He was extremely regretful in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't guard against Stag King and Old Demon Jifeng, but Old Demon Jifeng's strength was now inferior to his. Therefore, Xiao Hua placed his attention on Stag King. Moreover, when Xiao Hua escaped, Old Demon Jifeng also had a panicked appearance. His acting was even better than Xiao Hua's. But who would have thought that when Xiao Hua had just flown several zhang and was still paying attention to the Stag King's sneak attack? Old Monster Jifeng actually opened his mouth and that piece of broken bone flew into the air like a magic weapon. Before it even emitted a rumbling sound, the space around Xiao Hua for several zhang around him immediately lost all traces of wind. Xiao Hua's figure had just stopped, when a huge rumbling sound imprisoned him. The power of the stars and the moon was like a large hand that firmly held Xiao Hua in the air. He couldn't move at all. Moreover, the white bone talisman on the top of the golden bell flashed, and the power of the stars and moon in the sky continuously descended. Not only did the thickness of the golden bell increase, but the ants that were flying over were also abnormally active. Once they touched the power of the stars and the moon, the bodies of the ants suddenly became several times bigger. Moreover, their flying speed also increased several times. In the blink of an eye, the brilliance of the golden bell was already blocked by the ants. There were even more ants rushing towards the golden bell. Unfortunately, at the same time that White Bones expanded, old demon Jifeng was slightly stunned because Xiao Hua's sharp gaze swept past him, and Xiao Hua simply disregarded him. Eh! Old monster Jifeng's heart was somewhat strange, and his hand unconsciously became sluggish. It was also at this time that Xiao Hua's cold laughter unexpectedly came from old monster Jifeng's ears. Not good. Old monster Jifeng was stunned, and thought to himself, this old man was tricked. However, old monster Jifeng still didn't understand how he was tricked, and what Xiao Hua tricked him into doing. At this time, a sharp pain came from the depths of his mind, as if an invisible giant axe was chopping into his skull. Ah! Facing Xiao Hua's soul stab and soul cultivation secret technique attack, old monster Jifeng was caught unprepared, and his wind-like figure staggered a few times in the air before falling to the ground. Just as old monster Jifeng lost his balance, a golden light flew out from Xiao Hua's sword light, and in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, it chopped off old monster Jifeng's suddenly raised tail. The reason why old monster Jifeng's tail was raised was to balance his body. Now that the soaring dragon shears suddenly cut off his tail, how could old monster Jifeng still maintain his balance? His staggered figure tumbled a few times in the air before falling to the ground. Woo woo! Just as old monster Jifeng's thin and short legs touched the ground, thousands of ants took the opportunity to pounce on him. Old monster Jifeng's two small claws covered his head, and just as he was about to use the wind escape technique to fly up, his small tail swayed a few times, and his body didn't fly up. Instead, his entire body rolled on the ground. This time, old monster Jifeng was miserable. Not only the ants flying in the sky, even the ants on the ground were stained with old monster Jifeng's body. Boom! Old monster Jifeng's body was surrounded by a demonic wind, and hundreds of ants were blown up by this demonic wind. However, when the demonic wind rose, even more ants rushed over. Damn it! Old monster Jifeng cursed angrily in his heart. Enduring the pain in his head, he waved his hand, and a few feet long grayish-white brilliance with the thickness of a thumb appeared. It flew out 1,000 feet, and wherever the 1,000 feet brilliance passed by, countless ants turned into dust. Unfortunately, what made old monster Jifeng's heart jump was that after the brilliance passed, even more ants pounced on the white bones. Sha sha! Amidst the rustling sound, whether it was the white bones, talismans, or starlight, they were all cleanly devoured by the ants. Hiss! Old monster Jifeng sucked in a breath of cold air, and an indescribable panic emerged from the bottom of his heart. However, this panic only lasted for a few breaths, and a numb feeling that directly penetrated into his bone marrow and soul came from the surface of his body. Old monster Jifeng hurriedly looked over, and saw that the layers of ants had already covered his body like clothes. The demonic chi protecting his body had already disappeared, and in this short period of time, thousands of ants had already bitten his body. The demonic body that had been refined for thousands of years was now like grass in the mouths of ants, and he was completely unable to resist. Not good! Old monster Jifeng exclaimed, and his body twisted extremely, as if he wanted to escape from being devoured by the ants. However, after twisting a few times, old monster Jifeng stopped. How can I stop? I can't stop! Old monster Jifeng hurriedly shouted in his heart, but his body did not listen to his thoughts. It was as if the feeling of being devoured by ants was the most profound enjoyment, and being devoured by ants was his life's greatest pursuit. Ah! Old monster Jifeng roared as if he had gone mad, and his two thin and short legs quickly ran forward, as if he wanted to escape this strange feeling. Unfortunately, he was only able to take 2 steps before his entire body stopped. At this moment, the white bones of his thin and short legs could be seen. Crack, crack! 2 weak and crisp sounds rang out. The bones of old demon Jifeng's legs were broken. His entire body curled up and fell to the ground. Following the momentum of his previous charge, he slowly rolled. Not to mention flying, he couldn't even run. Just as old monster Jifeng was lying down, an inconceivable expression appeared in his eyes, and he looked straight at the sky. He actually spoke the demonic language of the 1,000 demonic sacred realm. What is this? Ancient magnificent scene? Ancient bloodline? This is the inheritance of our demonic sacred realm? Just like how Xiao Hua saw Zhang Lang Zi's comprehension of the heavenly Tao on the path understanding ants, old monster Zhifeng also saw the mystery that he yearned for even in his dreams on these ants. The light in his eyes was abnormally bright. However, this light only flashed in old monster Zhifeng's eyes for a moment, and then it dimmed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Like the north wind blowing through the snow, the layers of snow rolled up, revealing the scorched earth. This scorched earth was like old monster Zhifeng's white bones, and it was quickly devoured by the ants. The strangest thing was that the heaven and earth bracelet on old monster Zhifeng's arm was also devoured by the ants. The items inside were not exposed because of the heaven and earth bracelet's damage, and they simply fell into the ants' stomachs, disappearing without a trace. Chapter 3778. This is too strange. Xiao Hua's sneak attack on old monster Zhifeng had succeeded, so he naturally paid attention to old monster Zhifeng's life and death. He released a powerful divine sense, and while resisting the ants' devouring, he also deliberately probed. Seeing old monster Zhifeng being strangely killed by the ants that blotted out the sky without leaving a single trace behind, Xiao Hua couldn't help but shrink his neck. He could already imagine how many cultivators and demons had fallen here since ancient times. Damn it! I didn't expect these ants to be the most powerful beasts in the relic realm. Xiao Hua withdrew his divine sense in a panic. His eyes turned rapidly as he thought of a way to escape. At this moment, Xiao Hua was far away from Aozhan and the others, but he was on par with the Stag King. However, when he saw the ants on the Stag King and then looked at himself, he couldn't help but frown. Although there were many ants on the Stag King, the speed at which they devoured the demonic clouds and demonic aura on the Stag King was relatively slow. He looked at the ants outside his sword light. Not only were there many of them, but they were also crazy, biting the sword light at an extremely fast speed. Xiao Hua knew that the sword light was formed from the true qi of his Confucian cultivation. When the sword light was completely devoured, the true qi in his middle dantian would also be finished. If it was an ordinary Confucian cultivator, he would probably end up in the ant's stomach. Of course, Xiao Hua didn't only have the Confucian true qi, but also his lower dantian and Buddha Saraira. However, if Xiao Hua couldn't find a way to escape before these divine powers were exhausted, he would follow in old monster Zhifeng's footsteps. Could it be that these ants are especially sensitive to the righteous qi of Confucian cultivators, the heaven-earth essence qi of Taoism, and the Buddha's light of Buddhism? Xiao Hua thought to himself, is it because there's the bloodline of the absolute saint and all kinds of true blood on the altar that the ancient big demon is afraid of humans taking it away or destroying it? But the problem is that although I know some demonic cultivation methods and my body is comparable to a demon's, I don't have any demonic clouds or demonic aura. What if I use demonic aura? Xiao Hua was just thinking about it, but he immediately gave up on the idea because his gaze fell on the Stag King. Although there were many ants around King Mulu, he was not as panicked as old monster Zhifeng. He was even looking at Xiao Hua strangely, and his flying figure slowed down a little. What's the Stag King trying to do? Was he not afraid of these ants? Or perhaps he knows how to escape? Xiao Hua was extremely bewildered. However, when his gaze swept across the universe bracelet on King Stag's arm, Xiao Hua came to a realization. At the same time, the huge rock in his heart also fell. Ha! I understand now. What the Stag King relied on was nothing more than his token. Taking the token of the legacy world represented the inheritance of the legacy world's great demon's true blood. The legacy world's forbidden technique would not disregard the life and death of these demons. Although the ants at the edge of the altar were powerful, they were merely testing the strength of the demon that had taken the token. With the Stag King's strength, he was qualified to obtain the true blood. Therefore, at the most critical moment, the token would help him escape. Fuck. Since the token was useful, didn't this Shao also have a token? My strength surpasses that of the Stag King, so wouldn't I be more confident than him? As for why the Stag King didn't fly far away and insisted on paying attention to this Shao here, it seems like he was still worried about this Shao. He wanted to see if the Shao had a token or jade eyes. That comfort easily led Xiao Hua into a state of comprehension. The moment Xiao Hua's mind was at ease, he suddenly woke up. This Xiao just came out of Cang Longzi's state of comprehension. How could I have comprehended the Tao so quickly? This is definitely a trap. It's the ant's poison. When old monster Jifeng was swallowed, the strange smile that came from the ant's crack? Was it this? And Senior Cang Longzi, At this moment, Xiao Hua also understood why Cang Longzi wanted to condense his comprehension into the ants. It was because his comprehension really did come from the ants, and it really was the feeling between life and death. It was no longer important whether Cang Longzi had obtained a true spirit bloodline or a supreme saint bloodline. For a Taoist cultivator who could escape from the encirclement of flying ants, there was nothing more important than comprehending the Tao. Clang! The sword aura around Xiao Hua's body once again flourished. It was as if he was raising his hands to lift an ant that weighed tens of thousands of caddies. When the ant at the bottom was annihilated by the sword aura, Xiao Hua pressed down on his teeth. The Kunlun mirror shook, and another beam of light shot out. Xiao Hua's figure rapidly shrank. With a rumbling sound of thunder, he escaped through the gap of the beam of light. Zzz. Xiao Hua's body had just escaped when the ants, which were denser than raindrops, pounced on Xiao Hua again. Sigh! Xiao Hua naturally didn't dare to release his divine sense. He could only look with his eyes and unconsciously sighed. This was because the sky had already become a world of ants. The altar in the distance was already long gone. Other than ants, there were more ants. The torrent of ants completely protected the altar. Looking at his body, although the protective golden light flickered, the ants didn't fear the golden light at all. They were still crazily swallowing it without any scruples. They're not afraid of eating too much and getting diarrhea. Xiao Hua looked at these ants with great appetites. He really didn't know what to do. 1, 2, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 ants were easy to deal with. Xiao Hua had enough means to kill them all. But now, it wasn't just hundreds of millions of ants. Every inch of space in the sky and on the ground was filled with ants. Xiao Hua couldn't kill them all. Woo! Xiao Hua slapped his forehead, and a big hand rushed out and scooped up the space in front of him. The space in front of him was immediately swept clean. Xiao Hua urged the lightning escape technique and hurriedly flew over, but right after he flew over, the space was once again filled with ants. It was even faster than Traceless Spring Dream. Just like this, while activating the nascent soul's hand and using the lightning escape technique, Xiao Hua tried his best to ensure that the number of ants outside his body was maintained within a range he could bear. After flying for another hour, Xiao Hua felt that his magic power was exhausted too much. He didn't dare to use the nascent soul's hand again. Moreover, the lightning released by the lightning escape technique was devoured by the ants. The speed of the lightning escape technique couldn't be increased later. Xiao Hua could even see a familiar brilliance from the corner of his eyes. Wasn't it the Stag King's token? The token protected his body. Although there were ants outside the brilliance of the token, it was obvious that the ants weren't particularly crazy about devouring. Therefore, when the Stag King increased his flying speed later, there weren't too many ants pouncing over. He wasn't left behind by Xiao Hua too much. This is what it means to be hasty. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment. He released his divine sense to protect his body. Then, he controlled his divine sense to rotate and overflow on the surface of his body like water. Sure enough, this method was extremely effective. Xiao Hua's control of his divine sense was relatively rough before. The divine sense hammer was like falling rocks and stars. Now that he was controlling it to the finest detail, he was a little unfamiliar at first. From time to time, ants would invade the depths of his divine sense, causing Xiao Hua to be a little flustered. However, after half a meal, Xiao Hua was already familiar with it. His divine sense flowed like flowing water, and Xiao Hua seemed to be wearing a layer of divine sense armor that blocked the attacks of the ants. After flying for the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua's heart finally relaxed. Although he didn't fly too fast during this period of time, correspondingly, he encountered fewer ants. In particular, the consumption of his spiritual sense during this period of time was far less than before. Xiao Hua was confident that he could persevere until he reached the altar. Moreover, Xiao Hua also found something strange. The speed at which these ants devoured true qi and magic power was far faster than divine sense, and the speed at which they devoured soul consciousness was faster than true qi. Humph! Xiao Hua stole a glance at the familiar brilliance in the distance. Of course, the speed at which they devour demonic qi is probably the slowest. I just don't know. What happened to the 3 dragons of the East Sea Dragon Palace and that vermilion bird? The Stag King, who was hiding in the brilliance of the token, naturally also saw Xiao Hua's abnormality. He was equally surprised. He only saw that Xiao Hua didn't have the token of the legacy realm, but he didn't know what methods he used. His original plan changed again. Chapter 3779. Unfortunately, plans could never keep up with changes. After flying for another 2 hours, the altar in the distance still hadn't appeared. The light on the token in the Stag King's hand was almost completely devoured by the ants. The Stag King began to panic again. But when he looked at Xiao Hua again, his speed was still the same, about the same as his. The black mass of ants was still pouring in from time to time, but it didn't increase. It was as if all the ants that poured in were killed by Xiao Hua. Damn it! I'll go all out. The Stag King clenched his teeth and his body began to expand. The monster cloud under his feet didn't dare to hold back and accelerated forward. Seeing that the Stag King was staking everything on a single throw, Xiao Hua wasn't as relaxed as the Stag King thought. His divine sense was also extremely exhausted. If he didn't need to rely on the Stag King to find the altar, Xiao Hua would have already used the lightning escape technique and rushed forward. Since he couldn't increase his speed, Xiao Hua naturally had to think about what to do when he reached the altar. Xiao Hua even looked at the densely packed ants outside, wondering if he should take out the Heaven's Punishment Prison crystal now or wait until he returned from the altar to save Tao Wu. These flying ants were definitely the best way to kill the Ming-Lu chain. Stag King, don't run. Seeing the Stag King suddenly accelerate, Xiao Hua hurriedly shouted, I still need you to lead me to the altar. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's voice didn't spread too far, and the Stag King was focused on escaping. Otherwise, the Stag King might not be able to recognize the direction after vomiting blood. Xiao Hua hurriedly moved his body. He didn't dare to consume too much of his magic power and only used the wind escape technique. However, after flying for half a meal's worth of time, boom! In the distance, there was an earth-shaking explosion. Then, a biting cold aura of desolation washed over like a tide. Wherever this aura passed, no matter if it was Xiao Hua's body or the surrounding air, all the ants turned into flying ash and disappeared. The black and gray color that covered the sky and the earth was instantly dispelled, revealing a clear, starry sky. The nearby ants were destroyed by this aura, and Xiao Hua's figure was also unable to stabilize. He was sent tumbling back several li by this aura. However, as soon as the ants disappeared, Xiao Hua raised his eyes and saw the altar not far away. At this time, it was emitting a roaring sound. Just like the altar he had seen behind Song Longzi's cave, it was slowly uprooting from the ground. Like a fountain, talismans spurted out from the top of the altar and then turned into a waterfall. When these talismans fell below the altar, they drilled into the ground and disappeared. The terrifying aura of the untainted land flowed out from these talismans like a waterfall. Moreover, as the altar rose higher, the aura became more and more violent. Looking at the bottom of the altar, 2 huge dragons with broken scales and bloodstains on their bodies were powerlessly struggling in the aura. One of the dragons was holding a small dragon that was struggling at death's door in its claws. Half of that small dragon's tail was broken, and one of its claws and half of its dragon horn were also missing. Next to the three dragons, a vermilion bird with a bald tail was standing in the air like a rooster that had lost a fight. It was very unwilling to admit defeat. Not to mention that its scarlet feathers were in disarray, and not to mention that half of its tail was missing. Just the dim scarlet flames around its body was enough to show that Zhu Mei was in a sorry state. However, although the four demons were in an extremely sorry state, they were the same as Xiaohua. They were staring blankly at the altar in front of them, and had long forgotten about their own injuries and embarrassment. At this time, the altar changed again. Endless nebula light pillars surged and fell, as if this altar was the only thing in the entire legacy realm. Boom, boom! As the power of the stars and the moon, which was difficult to see with the naked eye, fell, the talismans that had previously flooded out swelled uncontrollably. Those talismans then turned into totems. These totems washed over the altar over and over again, and gradually began to fill up again. In the end, it actually formed a picture of 1,000 demons. One by one, the great demons revealed their ferocious faces and revealed their supreme domineering aura, completely protecting the entire altar. This, Zhu Mei's eyes revealed shock. From what he had seen, even with his inheritance, there had never been such an inconceivable altar, let alone Xiaohua. Zhu Mei turned his head to look at Aozhan. Aozhan was just as stunned as him. Obviously, even in the Dragon Palace, there had never been such an altar. Is this the test of passing the last trial? Aozhan was surprised, but his face also revealed an excited expression. He was very curious about the things on the altar. As he spoke, he couldn't help but urge his wounded dragon body to rush toward the picture of 1,000 demons. Young prince! Aozhan was scared out of his wits. He didn't care about Ao Shuai in his dragon claws and shouted to block Aozhan. He said, "Don't move." Aozhan was a little unhappy. He glanced at Zhu Mei and muttered, "Since we've already reached the exit, why are you still being modest?" Aozhan thought for a moment and resisted the urge to tell him about the legacy realm. He only smiled bitterly and said, "Young prince, although we passed the test of ants, who knows if that was the last trial? It's not too late to wait and ask King Mulu before making a decision." Ao Shuai almost died. How could King Mulu still be alive? Aozhan didn't quite believe it, but when he released his primordial thought, he was surprised again. Not only was King Mulu flying over with an extremely dim token in his hand, but Xiaohua also seemed to be flying over easily. Damn it! What kind of world is this? Aozhan looked at the demon and human, then at the scars on his dragon body, and cursed inwardly. I can't even compare to a Taoist cultivator? Oh, how is Inspector Ao? King Mulu flew over and hurriedly asked when he saw Ao Shuai in such a state. Aozhan glanced at King Mulu and said coldly, "Thank you for your concern, King Mulu. Fortunately, Ao Shuai won't die for the time being. Let's get out of Cold Spirit Valley first. Only by returning to the East Sea Dragon Palace can Ao Shuai's life truly be saved." Okay. King Mulu raised his eyes to look at the seemingly alive great demons. His eyes were filled with indescribable joy. He nodded and said, "I'll prepare to break the restriction. The exit should be behind this demon formation." With that, King Mulu took out another beast's skin and pretended to look at it. Of course, Aozhan didn't believe King Mulu. He put Ao Shuai on the ground first, then took out a strange scale armor. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dragon chi. The scale armor instantly became huge. When Aozhan grabbed Ao Shuai's dragon body and put him inside, Xiaohua realized that the scale armor was actually somewhat similar to the Heaven and Earth bracelet. After putting away the scale armor, Aozhan glanced at Zhu Mei, who was using a secret technique to absorb the power of the stars and moon to heal her injuries. He transmitted his voice to Xiaohua and asked, "Xiaohua, this altar, is it where the demon bloodline is placed?" Can this demon formation be broken with a token? General Ao. Xiao Hua lowered his head and didn't approach the 4 demons. He transmitted his voice. I've already told you clearly that this direction is where the demon bloodline is located. Before the ants came out, I could still sense it. Now that the ants are gone and the demon formation has appeared again, I can't sense it. However, I've seen this altar before when I came in. It should be here. As for how to break the demon formation, I really don't know. There's no record of it in the token. Perhaps King Mu Lu's token will have it. After all, I came in through a different way than you all. Aozhan also had no other choice. He had already endured until here. He could only endure until there was a chance to rush into the altar. Moreover, he didn't believe that King Mu Lu could sense that he had found a flaw. Even if King Mu Lu had some tricks up his sleeve, Aozhan wasn't afraid. However, Xiao Hua still reminded Aozhan, General Ao, if King Mu Lu has any tricks up his sleeve, it's in this token. When you break the restriction here, you should be more careful. Alright, I naturally know this. Aozhan transmitted his voice. I hope fellow immortal Xiao will also be on the lookout. That's not a problem. Xiao Hua smiled. After a full hour, King Mu Lu raised his head and looked at the 3 demons. He then turned to Xiao Hua and said, Xiao Hua, is there a way to break the restriction and enter the exit in your ink cloud pupil? Xiao Hua shook his head and said, I've already said that the ink cloud pupil I obtained is somewhat incomplete. The location of the exit is recorded, but the ants, the altar, are all missing. I still want to borrow fellow immortal's power to get out. Without a way to break the restriction, you dare to come in? King Mu Lu said with some mockery. Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders. It doesn't matter. Our Dao sect cultivators have a hard time cultivating in hidden immortal continent. With this kind of training opportunity, even if I know it's dangerous, I'll still come in. Why so much nonsense? Zhu Mei said unhappily. King Mu Lu, quickly tell us, how do we break the restriction and find the exit? King Mu Lu ignored Xiao Hua and said to Zhu Mei with a smile, it's very simple, just like before. There we'll attack together. At the end, I'll activate the token. And this time, we don't need to activate Essence Blood. But, Zhu Mei looked at Xiao Hua and asked again, Old Demon Jifeng is dead, Ao Shui is seriously injured, and this Xiao Hua is also human. With only us 4 demons, can we do it? Of course we can. King Mu Lu said confidently, you 3 demons form a triangle. I'll be in the middle. With our power, we can definitely break the restriction. Alright. Zhu Mei looked and said, quickly assign a position. I have a bad feeling. We'd better get out of here as soon as possible. General Ao, please. King Mu Lu said from high up in the sky. Zhanjia pondered and flew into the sky. Little prince, please. Zhu Mei, please. King Mu Lu pointed to 2 places. The 2 demons also flew over. Seeing King Mu Lu's gaze, Xiao Hua retreated a few dozen feet and waved his hand. I'll stay away from you guys. Feel free to do whatever you want. Xiao Hua, don't you have any ideas? Zhu Mei warned. If we can break the restriction and find the exit, we'll definitely take you away. If you cause trouble, don't blame us for being ruthless. Chapter 3780. Hee. Rest assured, fellow immortals, this Xiao knows what to do. Xiao Hua readily agreed. Rise! The 3 demons followed the Stag King's command and used their own demonic techniques. Rays of moon and star power fell around them. However, when the demonic energy of the 3 demons fell into the demonic formation, it didn't move at all. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. Without waiting for Aozhan to question, the Stag King waved his hand and the antler flew into the air. Pooh, the Stag King actually spat out another mouthful of essence blood. Boom! The antler emitted a bloody light. This time, the antler didn't turn into a cauldron. Instead, as the essence blood spread, it turned into a somewhat damaged large deer. This large deer was very sturdy. Its dense aura was very similar to the 10,000 demon diagram. Seeing this, the Stag King smirked and grabbed the antler. The large deer let out a roar and was about to move. Wait! Suddenly, Jean descended from the sky and stood in front of the large deer as he shouted loudly. Senior brother, you're going to die. Ah! The Stag King was shocked and asked, General AO, what's the matter? This one wants to ask the Stag King, is this the Legacy Realm or the Cold Spirit Valley? If you rush into the altar and don't come back, what should we do if the demonic formation of the 10,000 demon diagram hasn't been broken? Jean stared at the Stag King and asked word by word. What? Legacy Realm? This is the Legacy Realm? When Zhu Mei and Ao Qian heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Ao Qian even shouted, The Legacy Realm is only a legend. How could this be the Legacy Realm? Who? Just as the Stag King was at a loss and didn't know how to answer, the distant Xiao Hua suddenly exclaimed. Looking at the flat ground below Ao Qian, a small dragon suddenly flew out. This small dragon's color was the same as the ground, but when it flew into the air, it changed again. Although this dragon's body was full of wounds, this small dragon approached Ao Qian faster than lightning. When it opened its mouth, a dark red brilliance rushed out and was about to nail Ao Qian's body. Ao Qian was stunned when he heard about the Legacy Realm and couldn't react in time. Seeing the change, he hurriedly twisted his dragon body and dodged to the side. Ao Jean was even more shocked, but when he saw that Ao Qian dodged the dark red brilliance, he relaxed. However, his expression changed again. How could he still care to stop the Stag King? He shouted, Little Prince, be careful. Then he swung his dragon body and flew towards the side where the little prince was dodging. However, Ao Jean was too late. Just as Ao Qian dodged, another small dragon flew up from the ground. This small dragon was missing half of its tail. This small dragon had just pounced on Ao Qian, and the dragon aura around it flourished. Rumble! A huge sound was heard, and the huge dragon's body completely exploded. Dozens of red brilliance mixed with hundreds of scales and other things rushed into Ao Qian's dragon body. Ao Qian's dragon body flipped a few times in the air and was lifted high. Then, it fell heavily on the ground, smashing a huge hole in the ground. The explosive power of this small dragon was so great that Xiao Hua and Ao Zhan's bodies were also overturned. The human and dragon's bodies tumbled in the air. Even the 1,000 Fei diagram that fell from the altar flashed rapidly, like a curtain blown by the wind. After a few breaths, the air waves subsided. Within a few miles, there was a layer of blood. In the air, other than Xiao Hua and Ao Zhan, there was only the dumbfounded Zhu Mei. Whether it was the Stag King or the small dragon that attacked Ao Qian, they had all disappeared. Damn it! Ao Zhan's dragon eyes were red, as if he had gone mad. He quickly rushed to Ao Qian's side. When he flipped Ao Qian's dragon body over with his dragon claws, he saw that the dragon body was riddled with holes. 60% of the dragon scales were torn, and the dragon blood that flowed out was black. Obviously, the small dragon that had just exploded was poisoned. Ah! Ao Zhan roared at the sky. His dragon body flew up, creating countless air waves. Ao Zhan swept with his Yuan will as he flew. He looked around the altar, but obviously, he didn't find the small dragon that attacked him. When Ao Zhan was about to fly further away to search, he saw that there were still ants in the distant sky that hadn't completely disappeared. Oh my God! What's with these two small dragons? Xiao Hua was a little dumbfounded. They actually chased him all the way here. Really amazing. In that case, the cry of the golden-winged rock before we met the ants should have been from chasing these two small dragons? That? Xiao Hua whispered. General Ao, let's see if the young prince can be saved first. Since the Stag King is gone, maybe the small dragon followed him into the altar. Impossible, Zhu Mei said coldly. The token of the Legacy Realm can only be used by one monster. That small dragon can't enter. You, how do you know? Ao Zhan stared at Zhu Mei, his eyes full of hatred. He knew that it was inappropriate. Zhu Mei really didn't know about the Stag King's scheme. Do you need me to explain about the inheritance? Zhu Mei retorted. If you believed me, you would have told me that this was the legacy realm. Would so many things have happened? How do I know if you're in cahoots with the Stag King? Zhan sneered. Forget it. Forget it, Xiao Hua hurriedly said. General Ao, it's useless to say anything now. Let's hurry and see the young prince. After all, it's useless. Zhan sighed. These two small dragons know the weakness of the East Sea Dragon clan. The poison they used isn't something I can cure right now. Send it into your dragon shell and bring it back to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Zhu Mei said indifferently. Dragon shell can't stop the poison. If there's no effective spiritual item, the young prince will die in half an hour. Zhan bit his lip and said, What spiritual item do you need? Xiao Hua urged. Dragon God Grass. Zhan was somewhat impatient. He seemed to be in a bad mood. That's the treasure of Dragon Island. Zhu Mei sneered. Your East Sea Dragon Palace might have half of it. What else? Xiao Hua didn't give up. Only this? Yes, only this thing can cure the poison. Zhan was dejected. He looked sadly at Qian, whose flesh was festering. If we have the dragon saliva of a true dragon, maybe we can buy some time, Zhu Mei said. Then we can put Qian into the dragon shell. When we return to the East Sea Dragon Palace. How about this? Xiao Hua took out the green dragon saliva without hesitation. See, green dragon saliva? Zhan sniffled slightly and immediately came to his senses. He practically snatched the azure abyss dragon saliva away. Without even asking Xiao Hua, he hurriedly flew in front of Qian and placed the azure abyss dragon saliva into Qian's mouth. Sure enough, the green light mixed with ice froze Qian's dragon body. The black dragon blood no longer flowed out. Phew! Zhan let out a long sigh and hurriedly took out the long bay to put Qian away. Just as he was about to speak, his expression changed slightly. With a wave of his hand, a half-inch broken waist token fell into his hand. Isn't this the West? Zhu Mei saw the origin of the waist token at a glance. However, he only said one word and then closed his mouth again. This kind of sensitive thing was not something he could talk about. Zhan's expression remained unchanged. He put away the broken waist token and turned to look at Xiao Hua. After pondering for a moment, he took out a long dragon pendant from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. Fellow immortal Xiao, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. This is my token. Please accept it. I remember that fellow immortal seemed to have said something before. When fellow immortal is free, you can take this thing to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Good. Xiao Hua nodded and carefully put away the dragon pendant. He cupped his hands and said, I will need General Ao's help in the future. And Zhan nodded. He looked at the myriad demon picture on the altar and said, Now, I will listen to fellow immortal Xiao. At this point, Zhan looked at Zhu Mei, who was flapping her wings slightly, and warned, Zhu Mei, don't think too much. You are definitely not a match for me and Xiao Hua. Even if I can't get the true spirit bloodline and enter the altar, I will not let you hurt fellow immortal Xiao. Of course, if you sincerely cooperate with us, we may have a way to go in. Zhu Mei naturally had other plans. He might not have the intention to hurt Xiao Hua, but he definitely had the intention to steal Xiao Hua's keepsake. Of course, he also knew that Xiao Hua was now bound to Zhan. Otherwise, how could he have waited for so long? Even if you have the keepsake, only one can go in. Zhu Mei sneered. I want to see how you will get out after he goes in. Zhan was not flustered. He said indifferently, There will always be a way. Maybe the Stag King inside will get the true blood and the altar will change. Even if there is no way, I will let fellow immortal Xiao go in first. Xiao Hua looked at the demon formation on the altar and said confidently, There is no need for that. Oh, what method does fellow immortal Xiao have? Zhu Mei changed the way she addressed him and asked curiously. Xiao Hua was glad. Fortunately, when the ants appeared, he did not throw out the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. Now he could use it to break the seal. I have this. Xiao Hua smiled and took out the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. This? Zhu Mei did not understand. Ao Zhan raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, Fellow Immortal Xiao actually has the Immortal Palace's Heaven's Punishment prison crystal? We can give it a try. Fellow Immortal Zhu, General Ao. Xiao Hua looked at Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan. I have the same keepsake as the Stag King, so there is no problem for me to go in. My Heaven's Punishment prison crystal is locked by the law of the Immortal Palace's Jade Seal. The law of the Immortal Palace's inscriptions need to be unlocked. If it is forcibly broken, the law of the Immortal Palace's power of law will counterattack. I cannot guarantee that the power of law will be able to break the demon formation, but I can give it a try. The two of you should be prepared. If possible, please try to go in. Okay. Zhu Mei nodded. If I go in, I will owe you a favor. Chapter 3781. Well said. Xiao Hua looked around and reminded the two demons. When this Xiao uses this Heaven's Punishment prison crystal, the two of you should help me look around. This Xiao has always felt that something is wrong. And, fellow Immortal Xiao, you can rest assured, Ao Zhan said coldly. This one is afraid that he won't come out. Xiao Hua didn't say anything else after hearing that. He walked to the front of the demon array and looked at the big demon totems that were whistling down. With a wave of his hand, the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal fell into it. On the 10,000 demon picture, a big demon with 3 heads and 2 arms coincidentally flew down and crashed into the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. The big demon totem opened its mouth as if it was alive. A thick demon aura mixed with thousands of starlight crashed into the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. Shwa! Just like the collapse of the inscription law chain that night, hundreds of inscription laws began to flicker. Under the impact of the demon aura, these inscription laws gave rise to an indescribable fluctuation. Then, with a kacha, a total of 9 different colored thunderbolts came out from the inscription laws. Then, 9 dragon-shaped phantoms appeared from the thunderbolts. The 9 dragons danced and condensed into an oval phantom. A suffocating supreme aura suddenly rushed out from the oval phantom and directly crashed into the big demon totem. Oh! The big demon totem suddenly roared, and the entire 10,000 demon diagram instantly stopped. Within the diagram, every totem opened their mouths and spat out a strand of crystal silk. Tens of thousands of crystal silk threads were like thunderbolts as they attacked the oval-shaped shadow of the 9 dragons. Roar! The 9 dragons roared out. Every scale exploded. Flickering fine inscription law chains appeared again and rushed towards the thousands upon thousands of crystal silk. Boom, boom, boom. An inconceivable vision appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. In the midst of the rumbling, everything froze. Distortions appeared in the crystal threads and chains. The distortions were like millions of strange little hands that tore apart tiny spatial cracks. There was no awe-inspiring chi within those cracks, nor was there the power of the stars and the moon. There was only an indescribable strangeness leaking out from those cracks. Ding, ding, dong, dong. In the distortions, Xiao Hua felt that time had stopped. But suddenly, a strange heavenly music came out of the distortions. Then, a fist-sized palace flew out of the inscription law chain. This palace was completely formed by lightning. Purple, black, and yellow lightning formed the entire palace. When the palace appeared, the 10,000 demon picture suddenly moved. Thousands of light pillars of stars and moon fell from the sky. The crystal silk that was several times thicker than before covered the palace like a fishing net. Boom! The Thunder Palace instantly disintegrated and turned into a powerful attack. Thousands of lightning bolts rushed towards the crystal silk. The rich power of the rules forced Xiao Hua, Ao Zhan, and Zhu Mei to retreat more than 30 meters. Roar! Among the thousands upon thousands of crystal silk, there seemed to be the sole essence of a great demon. They were abnormally fierce, and the vast aura was not inferior to the power of the rules of the thunder. It's time. Xiao Hua saw this and hurriedly shouted, My two immortal friends, quickly get ready. Boom! With a huge roar, an extremely powerful aura was born from the 10,000 Fey diagram. The entire world was shaking, and even the 10,000 Fey diagram that had been stagnant was lifted up high, revealing a faint crack. Roar, J. Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan saw a rare opportunity. How could they hold back? They really used all their strength. Their entire demon bodies shrank to the extreme and rushed towards the center of the roar. At the place where the demon formation collided with the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal, a whirlpool dozens of meters wide appeared. The whirlpool was surrounded by dense spatial cracks. Only the center of the whirlpool began to reveal a rich demonic aura. After the lightning palace flew out, it turned into a grayish-white Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. After the lightning did not return, it actually cracked open with a "kacha" sound. Tao Wu's figure suddenly flew out from inside. The moment she appeared, the strong suction force in the surroundings seemed to want to tear her into pieces. Ah! Tao Wu's face, which was originally pleasantly surprised, instantly turned pale. In particular, in the huge roar, the two demon bodies had already broken through. Tao Wu had no choice but to raise her hand and prepare to face the enemy. No one move. We're all on the same side. Xiao Hua was already prepared. He shouted loudly. The Kunlun Mirror's light pillar arrived first, covering Tao Wu's body. Taoist Xiao, the fragments of the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. When Tao Wu heard Xiao Hua's voice, her face showed joy. She did not resist the Kunlun Mirror's light pillar. Instead, she loudly reminded. As for Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan, both of them wholeheartedly rushed into the altar. As long as Tao Wu did not provoke them, how could they casually make a move? Boom! The Kunlun Mirror's light pillar withdrew. Tao Wu and the fragments of the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal disappeared. At the same time, Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan's demon bodies did their best to resist the suction force of the void, and also disappeared at the end of the whirlpool. As the roar disappeared, the entire 10,000 demon picture started to move again. The whirlpool was also pushed into the demon formation that was densely filled with the aura of desolation and disappeared in a flash. In this legacy world, there was no Heaven's Earth origin chi and no noble chi. The Heaven's Punishment prison crystal was really not a match for the 10,000 demon picture. Ha ha! Xiao Hua clapped his hands and laughed. He looked left and right and hurriedly took out the token. He did not dare to be too negligent and rushed into the demon formation. Fortunately, when he saw the totem fall, the token emitted a silver-white brilliance and wrapped him up. The entire brilliance turned into a strange totem and brought him into the 10,000 demon picture. Xiao Hua's heart finally relaxed. The dragon that sneak-attacked Ao Qian had probably already escaped far away. Inside the 10,000 demon picture, Xiao Hua's body flashed with a gentle brilliance. Endless information was transmitted from the token, making Xiao Hua feel that the vicious great demons in front of him had come to life. Not only that, scenes of desolation passed through the brilliance of the 10,000 demon picture and penetrated into Xiao Hua's mind. In this desolation scene, there were giant apes overturning mountains, giant dragons overturning seas, giants lifting the sky, and even many demons fighting. Xiao Hua had never seen anything like this before. The time it took to pass through the 10,000 demon picture seemed very short, but for Xiao Hua it was extremely long. It was so long that his mind was in great pain and the blood in his body seemed to be boiling. In particular, Xiao Hua's body had an indescribable impulse. It was as if it wanted to spread its wings and fly, as if it wanted to be reborn. In the end, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. A huge bone-white altar appeared in front of him. Everything Xiao Hua had just seen was actually slowly disappearing. However, Xiao Hua didn't have to think about it. His blood boiled and flowed rapidly again. He completely broke away from the demonic technique of the blood drop paradise. The scene that was about to disappear suddenly became clear. It was as if it had been engraved and would never disappear again. The power of the bloodline. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. If it wasn't for this Zhao's unique bloodline, Even if this Xiao had seen the desolation of desolation, he definitely wouldn't have been able to remember it. This should be the truth of the desolation of desolation and ancient times being annihilated in time. Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua had just flown out of the 10,000 demon picture when he heard an extremely arrogant laughter from the ninth heaven. Wasn't that the Stag King who had come in earlier? When Xiao Hua scanned it with his divine sense, his expression changed slightly. Because divine sense couldn't leave his body, Buddhist sense and soul sense couldn't be used either. Needless to say, near the altar only demonic abilities could be used. And these abilities, Xiao Hua wasn't proficient in them. Xiao Hua put away the keepsake and looked up. He saw that this was a tall altar that directly pierced into the moon and stars. The altar was completely gray and was completely made of white bones. On the white bones, there were many lifelike great demon totems engraved. Every layer had a totem, and these totems emitted different auras. Hiss! Xiao Hua took a small breath and squinted his eyes to look at the sky. He saw that in the sky, Ao Zhan had transformed into a giant dragon that was thousands of feet long. Not far from Ao Zhan, there was a vermilion bird that was also thousands of feet long with red flames flashing around its body. It was Zhu Mei who had recovered her demonic body. Mu Lu King. Zhu Mei's voice seemed to resound through heaven and earth. I helped you enter the relic realm, but you actually schemed against me. Not to mention that I won't stop you from obtaining the true spirit blood of the ancient deer clan. Even if you obtain it, I will still kill you. Do you know? Zhu Mei. Stag King's voice wasn't inferior to Zhu Mei's. It was equally deafening. This king would rather bring old monster Zhifeng to this altar than bring you and the 3 evil dragons. Why? Ao Zhan's voice was very calm, like a bolt from the blue. Stag King replied, because this king can't bear to see your arrogant faces. This king is also the king of my deer clan, but in front of you, I'm just like old monster Zhifeng. When there's something to do, I'll casually point my fingers, and when there's nothing to do, I'll scold you. What do you think you're waiting for? Isn't it just that your bloodline is nobler than this king's? Compared to the difficulty of cultivation, can you compare to this king and old monster Zhifeng? This king really wants to stomp your faces under my feet and stomp them into meat patties. If that's the case, why did you invite me? Why do you have to be so servile in front of me? Zhu Mei didn't care and sneered. Haha, of course it's because you're strong. Stag King laughed. Previously, this king only thought this place was the Cold Spirit Valley, a place to gain experience. I invited you here just to protect you. Without your essence blood, the door to the legacy realm really isn't easy to open. Ao Zhan pressed. What kind of demon attacked my dragon palace's young prince earlier? I'll be honest with you, Ao Zhan. The Stag King replied. This king's token was originally damaged. You all already knew this. This king doesn't even know who that dragon is. It must be because the entrance wasn't completely closed. It must be your East Sea Dragon Palace's mortal enemy who tracked it here. Of course, that human Xiao Hua actually didn't need demon blood to enter, so his token must be intact. Maybe that dragon was brought in by Xiao Hua. It's also possible. Chapter 3782. Bullshit. Xiao Hua could no longer hold it in. He cursed angrily while activating the Dharma embodiment of heaven and earth. His entire body suddenly expanded, and the immortal body enhancement technique madly absorbed the extremely rich power of the stars and moon. His body grew to a size of several hundred feet before stopping. At the same time, Xiao Hua didn't need to use any flying technique at all. He lifted his foot and walked up to the sky as if there were steps under his feet. The Stag King didn't care about Xiao Hua's appearance and said indifferently, only you and I have the token. Since it wasn't me who brought it here, it must be you. Moreover, since you have the ability to send Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan to the altar, you naturally have the ability to bring that dragon to the relic realm. Xiao Hua walked up to the sky and followed the direction of the voice. He saw that the Deer King was already at a part of the altar. On the bone-white altar, A totem that was slightly different from the Deer King's was engraved there. The strange totem jumped like flames, and a blood-red aura gushed out of the Stag King's body like a blood mist, connecting with the totem. Tiny wisps of blood jumped from the totem and flashed into the Deer King's body. General Ao, Xiao Hua, who had calmed down, ignored the Stag King's provocation and said, "It seems like the Stag King doesn't know the truth. Maybe he's faking it." Zhu Mei hated the Stag King to the core and said, "You didn't see his face after entering the relic realm. He acted as if it was real. If you and Ao Zhan hadn't exposed his face in the end, I would still be in the dark and still want to work for him." "Haha," the Stag King laughed. "Let's go. I've already begun to merge with the blood essence of my ancient deer demon. Although this bloodline is not as good as yours, I'm one step ahead. After merging, I'll definitely kill you all." "Damn it, why are you biting words like a Confucian cultivator?" Ao Zhan roared and pounced on the Deer King with his huge dragon body. Boom! A huge white bone flashed across the white bone altar in front of the Deer King. A blood-red thunderbolt appeared on the white bone, and Ao Zhan's dragon body was sent rolling. White bones! Xiao Hua's eyes widened and a pleasant surprise flashed through his eyes. Although this white bone didn't look any different from the other white bones, Xiao Hua recognized it at a glance. Wasn't this the incomplete white bone from his space? Ga! Zhu Mei moved as well. A ball of fire flew towards Mu Lu King. Crack, crack, crack. Without any suspense, another bone flew out from the altar and blocked the flame. A huge lightning bolt rushed out from the bone and extinguished the flame in an instant. How can white bones be so powerful? Xiao Hua was a little dumbfounded. Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan are demonic beast generals. Even though I didn't fight with them directly, their strength should be at the upper stages of the 6th grade of essence power, or even the 7th grade of essence power. This mere masterless skeleton was actually able to block one of their attacks. Gah! Zhu Mei seemed to have become angry out of humiliation. She let out another shrill cry and a demonic aura that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth shot out from her mouth. The demonic aura condensed into a huge talisman that instantly crossed the space of 10,000 feet and grabbed the altar. The power of the stars and the moon was swept away and everything was frozen. The power of laws? In the distance, Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and saw the faint runes that flashed through the space of 10,000 feet. Although the runes only existed for a short period of time, this space of 10,000 feet was already under Zhu Mei's control. No, it's not just the power of laws. Xiao Hua looked at the dark red flame beside the talisman and suddenly came to a realization. This is the law of fire that Zhu Mei obtained from comprehending the power of fire as a prodigy of the vermilion bird race. I understand now everything in the world has its own laws. Boom! The moment Xiao Hua comprehended, the stars in the space above exploded one by one. Morning stars were born one after another, and heavenly Dao Xiao Hua transmitted a lot of enlightenment. Haha! Are you jealous? Zhu Mei, I really didn't expect that this king would see a day when you're jealous of this king. The Stag King laughed loudly as if he was looking at a clown. Zhu Mei's shocking attack landed on the white bone altar without causing any waves at all. He laughed arrogantly and said, "Unfortunately, it's too late for you to be jealous. You don't have to be jealous in the future. This king is going to fuse with the essence blood of the ancient deer demon and devour your essence blood in a while." Woo! The blood mist around the Stag King made a strange sound. It was still somewhat under control before, but now it completely pounced on the blood flames of the totem. Crack, crack, crack. Like a dead tree burning in flames, the sound of explosions came from the totem. Then, the blood color of the totem gradually faded, and a Stag King that was completely the same as the totem and completely different from the Stag King was born from the blood flames. As the Stag King poked its head out, an extremely fierce aura was emitted. It was the aura of the true ancient beast that Xiao Hua saw in the desolate landscape. The blood flames seemed to be boiling as they emitted gurgling sounds. Damn it! Zhu Mei's body flipped in the air. Ao Zhan also roared, preparing to use dragon power and other Dragon Clan techniques. But at this moment, the boiling blood flames suddenly surged violently, and the Stag King's head that had already been born showed extreme panic. What's going on? Oh! Seeing that the Stag King had been reborn, Zhu Mei and Ao Zhan hurriedly stopped in the air and looked at everything in front of them with schadenfreude. It seemed that they didn't mind adding insult to injury at any time. The blood flame swelled uncontrollably like a huge blood bubble. The head that had already grown out seemed to have been blown. Then, blood thorns pierced out of the head one by one. Beams of starlight and moonlight fell on these blood thorns, and the moaning of the Stag King could be heard endlessly. Ha ha! I understand. Suddenly, Zhu Mei laughed loudly and pointed at the Stag King with her wings. Stag King, oh Stag King, you don't seem to have the pure bloodline of the Deer clan, do you? You're just a bastard. Stag King, you've really been caught in a trap of your own making. Ao Zhan also laughed. How could you possibly bear the pure bloodline of the ancient Deer clan? The inheritance in that bloodline isn't something that your impure blood essence can bear. You reap what you sow, Zhu Mei added. This king is the king of the Deer clan. The Stag King's voice was still panting. How is this possible? Boom! Before King Stag could finish his words, there was a loud bang and the blood bubble burst open. Thousands of tiny pieces of flesh flew out from the blood bubble. The blood bubble then shrank and fell into the totem. The blood flame on the totem disappeared at the same time, and the totem returned to its original state. Great! Zhu Mei laughed loudly, and the crimson flames rushed into the sky, looking extremely excited. Ao Zhan was naturally happy, but then he looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Fellow immortal Xiao Yu?" Xiao Hua smiled bitterly, and his mouth was bitter. Needless to say, even the Stag King's bloodline was impure and couldn't bear the ancient blood essence, so how could he bear it? Even the fallen gold mountains Yu family wouldn't be able to. They already had the bloodline of the human clan, and only a very small amount of true blood remained in their bloodline. Don't worry about me. Xiao Hua waved his hand. I didn't expect this either. Fortunately, the Stag King was one step ahead, otherwise, I would also have fallen here. Then, Xiao Hua looked at Zhu Mei and smiled. Since fellow immortal Zhu and General Ao's bloodline is different, and the totems you use are also different, there shouldn't be any conflicts. Since we met here, it's also fate. This Xiao doesn't know what you'll do to the human clan in the future, but this Xiao hopes that the two of you won't fight amongst yourselves. Xiao Hua, if this one finds out about the dragon vow, I'm afraid this one won't be able to. Ao Zhan smiled. But this one can tell fellow immortal for sure. This one will retreat wherever fellow immortal goes. Hee. There's no need for that. Xiao Hua waved his hand. The human clan and the demon clan are both in the 3 continents, and we share weal and woe. It's enough that we both remember the good of the other. All right? I can also answer fellow immortal Xiao in the same way. Zhu Mei withdrew her flame and looked at the altar. I already owed you a favor when I came in earlier, and now you've received the true blood of my ancient Vermilion Bird clan. This favor is really beyond redemption. I'll remember it in my heart. Then, Zhu Mei said to Ao Zhan, "Do you want to go first, or should I?" "Naturally, you'll go first." Ao Zhan smiled. "Your Vermilion Bird clan is at the bottom, so it's a bit closer than this one." Humph! Zhu Mei snorted coldly. Indeed, at the highest point of the altar there was a huge dragon. This totem was several times bigger than the phoenix below. Of course, the aura of the dragon and phoenix seemed to be on par, but it was unknown how much stronger it was than the Vermilion Bird below. Seeing this, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something and hurriedly called out. Chapter 3783. I'll go first. Zhu Mei looked at the blood of the Vermilion Bird that was like a crimson sun. The closer he got, the brighter it became. How could he bear it? With a shout, he flew towards the altar. As his huge body approached the altar, his body gradually shrank. When he landed on the altar, he was about the same size as Mu Lu King. As soon as Zhu Mei landed, there was a loud buzzing sound. The totem that she had been waiting for who knew how many years suddenly lit up. A blood-red flame rushed straight towards Zhu Mei. Zhu Mei didn't dare to be careless. Her face became dignified. She retracted her wings and flames rose from her wings. A crimson blood mist came out of her body and fell towards the flame. Ah! Zhu Mei couldn't help but scream as soon as he touched the flame. Xiao Hua was shocked and hurriedly asked, "General Ao, Zhu Mei, he's fine." Ao Zhan waved his hand indifferently. This is the ancient mark in his bloodline. It's attacking his mind. His bloodline isn't very pure right now, so he can't bear it. When he came out of the Thousand Fei picture, he also screamed. Yes, Xiao Hua answered casually. However, his mind turned quickly. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Is it the primordial scene in the Thousand Fei picture?" Yes. Ao Zhan smiled. "You may have a token to protect you, but Zhu Mei and I don't. The inheritance in a flash is enough to drive us crazy. However, after so long, we've forgotten a lot of those primordial scenes." Xiao Hua smiled. However, a storm was raging in his heart. If Ao Zhan and Zhu Mei couldn't bear the primordial scene, then what about him? Their bloodline couldn't bear it. But he saw it from the beginning to the end. But in an instant, Xiao Hua smiled again. Ao Zhan's flash of thought was obviously not a flash of thought. Ao Zhan was hiding this. But no matter what, if Ao Zhan and Zhu Mei's bloodline could withstand it, then he could also withstand it. Of course, he could use his true bloodline. But the problem is, Xiao Hua was stunned again. Am I a human or a monster? How can my bloodline compare to the dragon and vermilion bird clan? General Ao, could it be that we humans can't touch the true bloodline at all? Xiao Hua asked in a low voice. Ao Zhan thought that Xiao Hua was unwilling in his heart, so he said with a straight face, "Indeed, the bloodline of the human race is extremely weak. Even if it is mixed with the bloodline of the demon race, it will not be of much use. Of course, I also know that on the hidden immortal continent, there are some people with true bloodlines who also have inherited memories and secret techniques. However, fellow immortal Xiao should know that this legacy world was left behind by an ancient big demon. It is completely different from those so-called true bloodlines. Fellow immortal Xiao, you should think of another way." All right. In fact, when Xiao Hua thought of the vermilion bird, he immediately thought of Fairy Hongxia and Huang Mengxiang. He indeed wanted to get some true bloodline out. Seeing that Xiao Hua was a little disappointed, Ao Zhan thought for a moment and took out a jade eye. He stuck it on his forehead for a moment and handed it to Xiao Hua. "Fellow immortal Xiao, you don't have to regret it. This is the secret technique of my dragon race to collect true blood. You can try it first." If he could do it, he might as well start from the bottom of the altar and find a low-level great demon. When he had the chance in the future, he would give it a try, so that you won't have wasted your trip to the legacy realm. Oh, remember, you must try it when you are confident. Otherwise, you will end up like the Stag King. This Xiao naturally understands. Many thanks, General Ao. Xiao Hua hurriedly took it with a smile and stuck it on his forehead. He said, "How should I collect this true bloodline? It is all in the jade eye." Ao Zhan smiled and reminded again. This one understands the disappointment in fellow immortal Zhao's heart. However, this one still hopes that fellow immortal Xiao won't rashly try it. "I understand." Xiao Hua nodded gratefully. Looking at the altar at this time, Zhu Mei was no longer wailing. The totem turned into a blood-red flame and wrapped him up, similar to the Stag King before. After a while, a bald vermilion bird head poked out of the blood mass. "Ha ha ha!" Ao Zhan clapped and laughed. "Zhu Mei has lost a lot of face this time. Damn! A bald vermilion bird. Just looking at it makes me envious." Sure enough, Zhu Mei came out of the blood mass little by little. Not a single feather could be seen. Following his appearance, the blood mass became smaller and smaller, and the totem also gradually faded. Boom! When Zhu Mei's body was more than half out, the light beam of the moon and stars arrived as expected. At the same time, the blood mass rapidly swelled, and feathers grew out from Zhu Mei's body. Bzzz. Suddenly, the ball of blood surged again. Zhu Mei's body also stopped. A phantom image that resembled a flying phoenix appeared around his body. However, it only lasted for a moment. A strand of crimson flame flew out from the ball of blood and landed on the phantom image. The phantom image instantly turned into ashes and disappeared. That blood mass shrank faster, and a painful expression appeared on Zhu Mei's face. Fortunately, Eozhan smiled faintly. This Zhu Mei's bloodline is actually not pure. However, that impure bloodline actually came from a phoenix, so it didn't affect his integration with the vermilion bird true blood. So simple, he integrated with the true blood? Xiao Hua was somewhat surprised. Of course not. Eozhan smiled. A true rebirth and absorption of the true blood would take thousands of years. Once Zhu Mei completely absorbs it, he can reach the devouring void realm and directly break through the void. Of course, my dragon clan doesn't have any records of this, so I don't know the specific situation. However, this record is from me. Hee. Congratulations, General Ao. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and smiled. Unfortunately, although he noticed the pride in Eozhan's words, he didn't notice the other layer of meaning in Eozhan's words. Ga. More than 2 hours later, Zhu Mei let out a brisk cry and flew out of the blood mass in perfect condition. This body was much smaller than before, and the flames had also disappeared. Looking at the half-drop of true blood in the air, it didn't completely disappear. It seemed to be left behind because of Zhu Mei's impure bloodline. Boom! Before Zhu Mei could say anything, a small hole appeared on the altar, and a huge light beam covered Zhu Mei. Zhu Mei's body was involuntarily pulled towards the small hole by the light beam. Many thanks, fellow immortal Xiao. Zhu Mei suddenly stuck his head out and caught the half-drop of essence blood. He shook his head and threw the essence blood out of the light beam and shouted, "Wang!" As soon as the essence blood left the light beam, it immediately turned into a blood-red vermilion bird, ready to rush towards the altar. Phew! Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He immediately used the heaven and earth sleeve technique and covered the blood-red vermilion bird. Ga. The blood-red vermilion bird struggled for a moment before disappearing in the air. Eozhan's face showed a trace of strangeness. He looked at Zhu Mei's figure disappearing in the light beam in disbelief, then looked at Xiao Hua and thoughtfully said, "This Zhu Mei is quite calculating. It seems like he's not like Ao Qian, who only knows how to be domineering." At this time, he actually began to repay fellow immortal Zhao's kindness. This is good. Xiao Hua smiled and put the vermilion bird true blood into the space. He let the green-robed Xiao Hua suppress it with a jade bottle and runes. He looked at Eozhan and said, "If General Ao has such thoughts, it would be impolite for me to refuse." Good. Eozhan laughed and rushed to the top of the altar. "If this old man's bloodline is not pure, I will also give the remaining essence blood to fellow immortal Xiao." Xiao Hua quietly stood in the air and looked at Eozhan fusing with the true dragon bloodline. Sure enough, the conceited Eozhan had the ability to be conceited. The time he took to absorb the true dragon bloodline was 3 times longer than Zhu Mei. However, behind Eozhan there was also an extremely small drop of blood left. It seemed like his bloodline was also not pure. Of course, when the blood fused with the bloodline, Xiao Hua pretended not to see that inexplicable shadow of a flood dragon. Many thanks, fellow immortal Xiao. Eozhan did not go back on his words. When his figure flew into the light beam, he gave the trace of bloodline to Xiao Hua. "We will meet again someday. We will meet again someday, General Ao." Xiao Hua put away the bloodline and cupped his hands with a smile. When Eozhan disappeared, the entire altar was calm again. The dragon-shaped totem at the top was grayish-white, similar to the vermilion bird below. Hee. Xiao Hua looked at the phoenix under the dragon-shaped totem. In the end, he still remembered Fairy Hongxia, who he could not forget. Although Fairy Hongxia said clearly when she broke up with Xiao Hua in the Dawn Rain continent, she said that she had to carefully consider her relationship with Xiao Hua. If she could not think it through, she would not look for Xiao Hua again. However, when Xiao Hua disappeared from the Dawn Rain continent, he did not see Fairy Hongxia again. Of course, the two of them had not been separated for long. Perhaps Fairy Hongxia had not thought it through, but it could not be said that Fairy Hongxia had given up on Xiao Hua. In comparison, Xue Xue's feelings for Xiao Hua were so meaningful. It made Xiao Hua feel incomparable regret and emotions. Therefore, when Fairy Hongxia was compared to Xue Xue, Xiao Hua felt a little disappointed. However, Fairy Hongxia had a physical relationship with Xiao Hua. After all, she was Xiao Hua's true dual cultivation partner. How could Xiao Hua forget her from his heart? Unless Xiao Hua heard Fairy Hongxia say that she was unwilling to do so. Now that there was an excellent opportunity to let Fairy Hongxia advance, how could Xiao Hua not think of her? Think of that beautiful woman on the other side. Lian Yuanzi? Forget it. Xiao Hua sighed. He closed his eyes and carefully comprehended the secret technique of the dragon race that Ao Zhan sent to him. After an hour, he opened his eyes. He did not circulate his magic power. Instead, a green light flashed between his eyebrows. His soul thread stretched out like a large hand. Xiao Hua actually used the secret technique of the dragon race to display a soul cultivation technique to plunder the phoenix bloodline. Kacha! Just as the soul strand neared the altar, a huge white bone emerged from the altar. A bolt of lightning shot out from the white bone towards the soul strand. Hee. Xiao Hua chuckled. The soul strand also produced a bolt of lightning and fused with the bolt of lightning. As a result, the white bone floated in the air for a moment before falling back to the altar. Xiao Hua could clearly see that the white bone didn't fuse with the altar. Instead, it hung on it. Even if they had to suffer a little, they would definitely be able to absorb the ancient bloodlines of these two demons. Only then did Xiao Hua feel at ease letting the two demons out. Little Silver and the Divine Power Centipede trembled at first, but then they slowly gathered their courage. Encouraged by Xiao Hua, they flew down a little gingerly, each searching for a familiar aura. There's still you. After sending off Little Silver and the Divine Power Centipede, Xiao Hua took out Little Thunder, who was still in a daze, and flicked his head to wake him up. Sure enough, when Little Thunder opened his eyes, he was full of energy. He didn't need Xiao Hua's reminder at all as he flew towards a totem not far away that wasn't particularly similar to the Thunder Beast. Looking at the lightning flashing on the totem, Little Thunder cried out as he fell into a blood-red thunderbolt. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "In the end, you have to find your own opportunities and look for your own bloodline. You can naturally look for what you can. But how would I know what you can't? It looks like I can only look for them one by one." That's right, in Xiao Hua's space, in addition to Xiao Lei, there was also the Dream Dragonfly Butterfly, the Iceworm King Egg, and even the Water Pattern Butterfly. These were monsters, but Xiao Hua couldn't guarantee that their ancestors would be the same as them. Moreover, Xiao Hua also knew that there was more than one altar in the legacy world, so their bloodline might not necessarily be here. See, Nine-Tailed Fox? Just as Xiao Hua was looking down the altar, a nine-tailed fox totem suddenly appeared in front of him. Although he had never seen this demonic beast before, his heart suddenly jumped as soon as he saw the totem, as if this totem was extremely important to him. What's going on? Xiao Hua was a little puzzled. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment before he had a slight idea. Damn it, it feels like the karma spell I used near Broken Heart Mountain earlier. At that time, although I couldn't predict Fu Jiwen's fate and the spell wasn't perfect, it still left a trace. It looks like I need to collect this nine-tailed fox bloodline, but a mere drop doesn't seem to have any meaning. Xiao Hua was in a difficult position again. Do I have the ability to collect it completely? Could it be that I'm mistaken? Maybe. That's the only way. Xiao Hua looked at the white bones next to the nine-tailed fox totem and made a decision in his heart. Immediately, Xiao Hua no longer dared to be negligent. He searched layer by layer and finally found the totem of the Dream Sea Butterfly, the Iceworm King's Egg, and other totem on the lower level of the altar. Moreover, to Xiao Hua's surprise, except for the water pattern butterfly, which had a little accident and almost exploded to death, everything else went smoothly. Each and every one of them was slowly being reborn in the blood mist. Of course, in addition to these little things, there was also Dai-Er in Xiao Hua's space. Facing a little white goose that could reveal the secret of his space at any time, Xiao Hua didn't dare to take her out. Although Xiao Hua saw a totem that was very similar to her on the altar, he only dared to collect a little bit of blood essence. If there was a chance in the future, he could give it to Dai-Er. Since these little things were absorbing the ancient bloodline on the altar, Xiao Hua had no choice but to wait. The greedy Xiao Hua simply flew to the top of the altar and urged the soul thread and the secret technique of the dragon clan to collect them one by one from top to bottom. It seemed that, if it was possible, the greedy Xiao Hua even wanted to move the entire altar from the legacy world to his space. Of course, Xiao Hua wasn't just thinking about collecting the blood essence of these big ancient demons. He was also looking at the distribution of the white bones. After all, this altar was so high and so big that it was impossible for every level to be protected by white bones. Sure enough, when Xiao Hua painstakingly flew to the middle of the altar, those huge white bones had already disappeared and were replaced by other white bones and other strange demon artifacts. After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Hua was enjoying himself and didn't know how hard it was. It wasn't until Little Silver cheerfully jumped onto him that he broke away from the joy of his harvest. When he saw Little Silver's appearance, he couldn't help but stare blankly. Little Silver didn't look any different from before, but the feeling he gave Xiao Hua was very different. Little Silver had been clever and lovable before, and even cute. Now, Little Silver gave off a vast and enormous feeling. Although his body was still so small, there was an inexplicable sharpness in Xiao Hua's gaze, which stung his eyes a little. Damn it! Xiao Hua sighed with emotion in his heart. As expected of the primeval bloodline. It's only been a moment, but it's already been reborn. If this little spirit mouse is already like this, then what about the vermilion bird and the dragon? This way, this Xiao is even more looking forward to the supreme holy bloodline. Little Silver landed on Xiao Hua, his little eyes already beginning to narrow. Xiao Hua knew that the power of the bloodline had already taken effect, and Little Silver was likely going to advance again. Thus, he hurriedly put Little Silver away and stopped his diligent harvesting. He turned around and put the water-patterned butterfly, the iceworm king egg, and so on that he had absorbed the primeval bloodline into his space one by one. As for Little Lei, Xiao Hua really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy had long become muddle-headed after absorbing the bloodline, and even in his muddle-headed state, he still hugged the white bone on the altar tightly and refused to let go, as if he knew it was something good. After that, Xiao Hua continued to harvest with extreme patience and perseverance. When he finished harvesting all the primeval bloodlines on the altar, even someone as strong as Xiao Hua felt a little dizzy. After all, this was delicate work, and couldn't be carried out in large quantities at the same time using divine abilities. Using embroidery over and over again was really a cruel test for martial artists who brandish spears and staffs. With hard work comes a harvest. Xiao Hua stretched lazily and raised his eyes to look at the altar that stretched all the way to the sky. He himself couldn't believe that he had actually walked through it from top to bottom. Sometimes, a person's greed is also the driving force behind their progress. Other people's business is done. Now, it's time to look at this Zhao's own fortune. Xiao Hua's heart couldn't help but burn. He raised his eyes to look at the tall altar and walked up step by step. The top of the altar was somewhat similar to the peak of an ordinary mountain, but it was quite big. Xiao Hua looked at it with his naked eyes and saw that it was at least several hundred li in size. Xiao Hua stood on the white bone altar and saw the 10,000 Fei diagram gushing out from the center of the altar at a glance. At this time, it was still full of demonic qi, and totems of great demons were flying all over the sky. However, these totems couldn't cover the stars in the sky. Under the starlight, the images of the great demons were even more distinct, revealing their all-powerful spirit. White jade capital in the sky, 12 buildings and 5 cities. Immortals touch my head, and I'll be immortal. Xiao Hua looked at such a clear starry sky and saw such a heroic great demon totem. He couldn't help but recite. Although this Xiao doesn't know where the immortals are, with the path to heaven, not to mention immortals, this Xiao can even see gods and Buddhas. This Xiao doesn't need other people to touch my head and be immortal. This Xiao wants to touch other people's heads and teach them immortality. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.